Hello everyone, welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if Naruto only trusts female Kyuubi? And also check the description box to original creator of the beautiful creation. Naruto, who is sadly strolling down the road on his 5th birthday. Most of the time most kids would be happy or overjoyed. It's their birthday. However, Naruto has no one to celebrate with. Everyone hates him. He kept strolling around until he bumped into a man. "Oh, I am sorry." Naruto apologized as politely as possible. "It's Alyu, you demon," the clearly drunken man yelled, making a mob join in on the insults and beating. "You should just leave. Go. Die in a hole. Die. Leave. Monster," is what came out of their mouths. Naruto was slowly beaten until he was unconscious. Kurama, who was outraged by the humans' torture, took over his body as red chakra enveloped his body. Everyone backed off. "It's escaping. Kill it," they all shouted. Kurama, Naruto, pulled up her hands and expelled as much chakra to push them back. She rushed towards the Hokage tower and jumped up as high until she got to the window of the Hokage and then crashed into the window, then fell unconscious from lack of control. Hiruzen was shocked. He felt the sudden surge them suddenly. Their Naruto was almost dead with red chakra receding into his form. "Neiko, come with me," Hiruzen demanded as Neiko jumped down from her post. Neiko picked up the critical condition boy and they rushed to the hospital. Once they got there, "We need help," Neiko shouted to get their attention. Once they saw who it was, they just turned around. "If you don't heal this boy, you're all executed." The Hokage's voice boomed as doctors began rushing over. They rushed into the emergency room. Naruto awoke to see a blue sky. He blinked to focus where he was. He looked around to see trees around. He saw a lake with a mountain in the distance. "Hello?" Naruto asked. Kurama, who was a little ways away, walked towards the blonde. "Naruto?" she asked hastily. Naruto looked up slightly afraid. Mostly all teens and older Aldu were mean to him, so he always whimpered back in fear. Kurama was a good 16 years old. How she wanted to look girl with long red hair. Her eyes were red with slits and wore a dark red dress. Kurama lightly placed a hand on his head and stroked his blonde locks out of his face. "It's okay, Naruto, you're safe," Kurama said. She opened her arms lightly and wrapped around him. "You're okay now," she said lightly, making the little boy sobbed into her dress. She lightly petted his head to calm him down. "I'm sorry," Naruto muttered it, pulling away lightly. "For what?" Kurama asked lightly. "I got your dress wet," he said, making her chuckle. "That's all right," Kurama reassured him. "I'm sorry, miss, but where are we?" Naruto asked, confused, looking around, not recognizing his surroundings. "We're in your mind," she answered. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, more confused. He knew he didn't see anyone with red hair like that. "Why is she in my mind?" Naruto thought, confused. "I'm Kurama, the Kyuubi," she said, making him freeze. "You're not the bloodthirsty demon everyone says you are," Naruto said, making her chuckle lightly. "No, I was controlled on the night of the attack. The Undaime stopped me but couldn't kill me. He sealed me inside a newborn baby, you," she said, making him frown. "Why me?" Naruto asked sadly, laying down on his back. He was too noble to ask anyone else's son, she said, making Naruto have a mini heart attack. "My father," Naruto started, making her nod. "So Gramps did know," Naruto said dejectedly. "Yes, but the Sandaime did not want your father's enemies after you. This is why he didn't tell you," Kurama explained as Naruto lightly nodded. "Did you know my mother?" Naruto asked. "Yes, her name was Kushina Uzumaki. She was my container before you," Kurama said. "Now Naruto, I must ask, what do you want to become of this village?" she said, becoming serious. If he chose to go with or destroy the village, she would follow. I want to become Hokage. To protect people that acknowledge me," he said, making her smile at his pure soul. "I see. Then I shall help you," Kurama said, making Naruto look up brightly. "You will?" Naruto stuttered. Kurama nodded as she was tackled in a hug with a bombardment of thank yous. "So, you will help me train?" Naruto asked. "Yes, I will, kid. But it's not easy training," Kurama warned. "I don't care. I want to beat all the bad guys," Naruto said, tossing his fist in a punch motion in the air. Kurama chuckled at his antics. "Okay, may you rip a quarter of this off?" she said, pointing towards her wrist where a sealing tag with the kanji seal was on her wrist. Naruto nodded and ripped a quarter of it off. Naruto looked up at her with a smile. "Thank you, Kura-chan," Naruto said, making her blush. "You're welcome, little Naru-kun," she said. "Today is your birthday. Would you like me to give you a gift?" Kurama asked as Naruto's eyes widened. "Really?" Naruto asked hopefully. "Yes, I would like to give you a part of a bloodline. Once you're older I will give you the rest of it," she said, smiling at his confused face. "What's a bloodline?" Naruto asked, clueless. A bloodline is a special tool in clans. It runs in the family essentially. Kurama explained as Naruto nodded. "How can you give me a bloodline?" Naruto asked curiously. "All Biju have special abilities. Changing DNA is one of my unique quality of being the Kyuubi," Kurama said, making him nod in understanding. "So what's part of the bloodline you're going to give me?" Naruto asked. "I will give you all of the affinities of the elements. Meaning you can use ice release, lava release, wood release, that kind of thing," Kurama explained, making Naruto nod in the process of thinking, "Cool." Kurama smiled at his smile that was beaming directly at her. She chuckled lightly. Kurama pressed her fingers against Naruto's forehead before a flash of light happened. It died down while they were standing there seemingly unchanged. "There, I arranged your DNA to have all of the affinities," Kurama said before sitting down. Naruto wanted to sit down with her until he saw his hand fading. "What's happening?" Naruto asked, scared. "You're waking up. Don't worry, we can talk from your mind," Kurama said before waving at the fading Naruto. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to feel he was bandaged all over. He groaned slightly. "I'm glad you're awake," Hiruzen said as he got up from his chair to let Naruto see him. "I know why. People hate me," Naruto said, making Hiruzen eye him. "Why is that?" Hiruzen acted confused, making Naruto fume. "Kyuubi was sealed in me by the Yondaime," Naruto said, making Hiruzen eyes widen. "Who told you?" Hiruzen demanded, making Naruto whimper. "Kurama did," he said, making Hiruzen confused. "Who's Kurama?" Hiruzen asked. "Kyuubi is Kurama's title," Naruto said as he lightly peeled the bandages off, seeing he was fully healed. Hiruzen sighed before waving everyone except for him and Naruto to stand outside. He put up silencing barriers. "What else did it tell you?" Hiruzen said, making Naruto glare at Hiruzen. "She's not it. She's the only person I trust now," Naruto yelled, making Hiruzen frown slightly. "Wait. She?" Hiruzen exclaimed. Naruto nodded. "She told me everything, the night of her attacking. She was controlled. Dad fought him to get rid of his control," Naruto shouted, making Hiruzen's eyes widen once again. "She told you that as well, huh?" Hiruzen said, making Naruto nod. "That's why I said she's the only person I trust now," Naruto said, crossing his arms. "It's not like I would gloat that my father was the fourth." "You could have told me," Naruto said as he started crying. A light glow appeared, making them cover their eyes. They put their hand down to see a little fox. She cuddled up next to Naruto. "It's me, Kit," the fox said, now revealed as Kurama. They talked telepathically. "Kurama," Naruto shouted in happiness and hugged the fox. Hiruzen, however, had a kunai out, making Naruto growl and glare. "She's the one who saved me from your villagers," Naruto reminded, making Hiruzen sigh. Kurama began licking Naruto's face, making him giggle. "Kurama, that tickles," Naruto said, giggling as Kurama rubbed her nose on his whiskers, making him go with a full-blown laughter. Hiruzen sighed and walked out. He knew he lost all the trust he has for his surrogated grandson. Naruto got up and put Kurama in his jacket to hide her and rushed out to check out. The nurse sneered her way to check the demon brat out, but glad he would be gone. Naruto ran out of the hospital and went straight towards the park to play. He knew he would train but wanted to play at least once more. Kurama, regrettably, allowed it. Naruto saw a couple of kids playing. One had a dog on his head, one was cloud watching, and another was eating a bag of chips. Naruto ran over to them. "Hi," Naruto said, very excited. Kiba looked over, sniffing the air while Kurama popped her head out of his jacket. Kiba flew backwards out of surprise. "Is that a fox?" Choji asked. "Yeah," Naruto said sheepishly. Akamaru barked, making Naruto do a protective gesture for Kurama. Why do you have a fox?" Shikamaru asked. "She's like my companion, like ninja dogs, except she's a fox," Naruto said as Kurama yipped in agreement. This is Kurama, Naruto said, rubbing Kurama's head lightly. She's the only thing I have, Naruto muttered, making them look at him with confusion at what he meant. Kiba and Choji waved it off, but Shikamaru eyed him for a moment. He shook it off but still had it in his mind. Naruto and them introduced themselves, making Naruto smile lightly. So, are you guys going to the academy next year? Naruto asked, making them nod. Yeah, we are, they all said as there was a relief rush over Naruto. Well, at least I won't be completely alone in the academy, Naruto thought. You have me, kid, Kurama said, looking up towards him. I know, he said back, hugging her close to him protectively. Shikamaru caught his distressed look. You alright, Naruto? Shikamaru asked. Oh, yeah, I just had bad memories, Naruto said as Kurama licked his nose. Naruto giggled lightly. Shikaku, Shikamaru's dad, and Sume Inuzuka, Kiba's mother, came to pick the three kids up. Naruto felt a little dejected as he watched the three kids go off to their parents. Shikaku picked up Choji for Chozao. Naruto sighed before walking towards the Hokage's office. Ask him for your father's house address, Kurama suggested. Naruto agreed with the idea and walked in the Hokage tower, getting glares with whispers. Greg the demon fox and a fox together was heard around, making Naruto just unleash Kurama then and there. Naruto slowly went up to the secretary, who gladly didn't care that he was the container. She waved him up to the office, telling him that the Hokage was free. Naruto knocked on the door and walked in. He still didn't trust anyone in the village. He only liked Inu and Neiko, but they were his Anbu guard. May I have my inheritance? Naruto said as Hiruzen, knowing what he was talking about. He gave him an envelope and 3 scrolls. The envelope containing the address. Naruto nodded before leaving. The Anbu in the room was slightly confused. Free Anbu, Inu, Tenzo, and Neiko. They didn't know what he meant by inheritance. They shrugged it off as Naruto and Kurama went straight to the address. It was directly behind the Hokage monument. He kept walking until he came across the Namikaze estate. It was as big as the Hokage's tower. There a blood seal was on the door. Naruto lightly pricked his finger and rubbed it across the seal, making it glow bright blue, and then the door slowly creaked open. Luckily for Naruto, Minato and his mother wasn't seal masters for nothing. There was auto-cleaning seals and preserving seals. Kurama immediately told him to go to the library and learn a technique called cage bushin. When he first opened the door, he thought it was going to take days for him to find the scroll. The library was massive. He looked in the non-elemental section. He was lucky when he saw it on a nearby table. He immediately studied it and did the hand signs. He was able to summon 10 clones. Naruto was very happy about this. He studied the scroll inside out. Even the special ability. He told the clones to start reading all of the information they seemed fit to read. Naruto, who was exhausted, crashed on his parents' bed and passed out. Once Naruto got up, he went to the library to see the shadow clones still reading with a good stack of books next to them. He smiled and dispelled the clones, getting a rush of memories hit him like a train. Chakra, control, ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu. So much information came to him. He lightly smiled until Kurama broke the silence. Now, we need to get your chakra control up so you can summon more clones, Kurama said, making Naruto groan. Naruto was outside with 50 clones outside. Naruto, who was doing his physical training that Kurama told him to do, while his clones was working on all forms of chakra control. Kurama, who found a chakra paper to test if his affinities was actually in his DNA cord, handed him the chakra paper. Naruto channeled into the paper, making it split into 4 pieces. One soaked, the second burned, the third crumbled, and the fourth shattered to dust until the remaining pieces of the paper shredded up. Kurama nodded, knowing he having really strong affinities with all elements, but his wind was superior. Kurama, who had him put on some chakra weights and chakra control bracelets, made it to where every time he pumped his chakra into the weights made it heavier, and his bracelets was a form of chakra control. If he could separate them and keep them separate while doing other chakra control excesses for the whole day, would be able to have almost mid-Anbu level chakra control, but Kurama didn't tell him that, seeing that she wants him to be surprised. It took him a month to do all of the chakra control exercises with the help of his clones, but it took 3 months for him to do it with the bracelets. Kurama nodded and began doing his elemental training. He summoned 500 clones, 100 each for each exercise. For wind he had to cut a leaf straight down the middle, fire burn the leaf, water concentrate on water when you can pull it out of a source in a globe, earth crack a rock down the middle just with earth chakra, and lightning, generate sparks between his fingertips. He got that done in 3 months. Each time Naruto got used to his weights he always added more chakra until he could barely move. He was at 200 pounds when Kurama told him to stop so it would not hinder his growth. Naruto, who was looking through the library and looking through the scrolls, was interrupted by Kurama. "Naruto, you have the academy tomorrow," Kurama said, making Naruto whine. "Kura-chan." He whined, but the little fox began tickling him from his whiskers. Okay, Naruto said sadly as he climbed into bed. The fox jumped on the bed and snuggled up to the blonde's neck like a scarf. Naruto smiled lightly before dripping off to sleep. The sunlight was slightly peering in the window, slightly hitting the boy, making him whine but slowly get up. He looked at the clock to see it was 6:30. His class started at 8, but seeing he was far, very far from the academy, he was getting up. He got changed into his blue pants, red shirt with black Uzumaki swirl, with a light gray jacket. He walked out at 6:55 and started sprinting toward the academy. Once he got there it was 7:40. He lightly opened the door and sat down in a random seat in the middle. Kurama, who was snuggled close to Naruto in his jacket, popped her head out of his jacket and looked around to see they were about 20 minutes early. She mentally shrugged and started making conversation with Naruto. "So you think it's going to be fun?" Naruto asked, lightly scared but determined. "I don't know, Naruto," she replied as kids started flooding the classroom. Kurama, who jumped out of his jacket, began hopping from table to table. Naruto chuckled at Kurama while others eked at the random fox. Once the teacher, Uruka Amino, walked in, Kurama jumped on Naruto's head, making her get into an easy and comfortable position. Naruto shrugged off the weird looks he was getting and paid attention to Uruka, who was calling names to introduce themselves. "I'm Sasuke Uchiha, and I want to surpass my older brother Itachi." Insert fangirls. "I'm Sakura Haruno. I want to be an awesome kunoichi." Sakura said, "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I want," he looks towards Kurama, "to make a few proud of me for who I am." Naruto said, making others go along. Naruto pulled out a scroll and began reading it while the others introduced themselves. It was his mother's and father's taijutsu style. A few people looked over towards Naruto, making him lightly put away the scroll. He felt their stares and didn't want to deal with drama. Naruto looked out the window and sighed. Once the bell rang signaling lunch, Naruto got up last and walked out of the room. He looked at all the tables and noticed an area to be alone. Naruto sat down silently eating his food. A few looked over their shoulders, including Sasuke, to look towards Naruto. Naruto shrugged it off, but a few began murmuring things, making him uncomfortable. "He's the one Mom said to stay away from," a civilian kid said. "He's probably some loser," Sasuke said, which started the chain of fangirls started hating the now proclaimed loser. Naruto looked down as Kurama stirred, slightly disgusted by the kids that started that. Kurama came out of his jacket to look up at him. "Don't listen to them, kid," Kurama said as she began rubbing lightly under his neck to comfort him. "They don't know you," Kurama added. "You can't let words get to you in the shinobi world," Kurama said as Naruto nodded lightly. "His fox probably has rabies." That pissed him and Kurama off to no end. "The monk that has a dog," said, making everyone laugh and agree with the rumor. Uruka heard it and shifted uncomfortably to the new aura that was around the kids and mostly Naruto. Naruto's eyes became a tint of purple as tears gushed out from the unnecessary bullying. Kurama wanted to kill them there but felt the sadness and stress of Naruto and began whining towards him in her fox form. "It's okay, Naruto," she said, making Naruto shake his head lightly, making Kurama frown. She knew she was the only person he trusted, so it hurt her to see him like this. She noticed his eyes, knowing it was the effect of the bloodline she gave him. Naruto calmed down and stopped focusing on the behind-the-back bullying and went inside slightly sad. Uruka frowned at his student's predicament. Naruto sat down with his head down on the desk while Uruka walked in after. "Hey Naruto, don't listen to them," Uruka said, making Naruto lightly look up. "I hate popular people," Naruto said, muttering, making Uruka hear. "They always start rumors," Naruto said as Kurama popped out of his jacket. She was lightly whimpering and nudging him up. She nudged his whiskers, making him giggle lightly. Baruka smiled at the affection of the fox while others walked in. Everyone began avoiding him of the rumors, making Naruto and Iruka frown. What a loser! Sasuke muttered, making Naruto growl lightly for no one to hear. Yeah, what a loser! All the fangirls screeched. How am I a loser, may I ask? Naruto said as politely as possible. You just are, Sasuke said. That's not a legitimate reason. Naruto's sweat dropped. You have a stinking fox. Sakura screeched. He has a dog? I can't have a companion. Naruto mused, making others glare. At least my dog doesn't have rabies. Kiba said, making Naruto look confusingly at Kiba. Do you have facts? And why are you joining the fray? I didn't say anything to insult you, or anyone in fact in this room. Naruto said, making others look confusingly at him. You just go with the crowd. Naruto finished. What a doby. Sasuke said, making the others laugh. What a arrogant ass. Naruto shot back. Don't talk to Sasuke-kun like that. All the fangirls screeched. And he can? Naruto asked, annoyed. Yes, they said dumbly. Baruka sighed, feeling Naruto's pain. Everyone here be quiet. No one knows anything about Naruto and vice versa for him. So stop making rumors. Sasuke, Kiba, don't spread false rumors. Baruka said, making the two arrogant asses scoff. Baruka nodded to the quiet class and began his teaching. Naruto silently thanked his sensei of getting rid of the drama. After class, Naruto walked out and sat on the swing as he watched all of the kids get picked up by parents or siblings. Naruto sighed lightly, knowing most likely that he was alone. Naruto, who got up from the swing, started walking towards his home. Once he got home, he did his usual summon clones and began telling the groups to separate and reach scrolls and techniques. While the real Naruto went into his mind and rushed to Kurama. Naruto wrapped his arms around her, startling the girl. She lightly put her tails around him to comfort him. What was that for? Kurama asked as Naruto looked up. They insulted us, for one popular kid. Naruto said, annoyed as he buried himself in Kurama's shoulder. Please don't ever leave me. Naruto whispered quietly that Kurama could barely hear. I would never leave you. Kurama said, making him slightly cry on her shoulder. Thank you, Kura-chan, he said as he lightly fell asleep. Kurama lightly petted the blonde boy's head ever so lightly as she stared at the boy. He would be good, she thought, smiling lightly. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. A red with black outline fox tattoo was on the blonde boy's shoulder. Think of like directly behind the front side of the shoulder. Kurama smiled lightly as she continued to pet the blonde. When the sun came out, the blonde tired lightly as he opened his eyes. He went into the library and saw that most of the library was back in place, making Naruto look questionably at the clones. He dispelled them, getting all of the information from the history and the theory of throwing kunai and shurikens. Most of it was trajectory. Exceptionally hitting an impossible hittable shot without another kunai. Kurama saw the information and nodded. He needed all of this to at least become a genin. He made some more clones and told them to grab all B and lower class jutsu and study them. He then rushed into the bathroom to take a shower. He took off his clothing while looking at his body to see if he needed to work on any other muscles to improve them. He looked at his legs and they looked fine. Then he checked his arms and hands, which looked better, and thought he should run more, making a mental note on that. He turned around, making him gasp. He saw a red fox-like tattoo on his back. Kurama, what's this? Naruto asked as Kurama blushed in his head. You will find out when you're older, she said, waving it off. Naruto sighed but nodded. He jumped into the shower and washed fast. He jumped out and grabbed another pair of cloths before him, and Kurama began racing towards the academy. Naruto looked around and noticed the Uchiha wasn't there. He was semi-glad, seeing that he started the loser chain just from his fangirls. Once everyone was in the class, Naruto sat next to a boy named Shino, who didn't bother him or vice versa. It was sort of like an odd friendship between a bee and a human. If you don't bug me, I won't bug you. Naruto pushed the quote aside as Iruka walked in, slightly shocked and winded clearly on his face. I'm sorry to inform that all except one Uchiha has been wiped out, Iruka said, making a lot of people gasp. Most of the silent types went wide-eye. Kurama, who was listening in, basically said good riddance and karma is a bitch. Clearly knowing the Uchiha started most of the messes from their pride. The last survivor is Sasuke Uchiha. He won't be here for a while, seeing he needs time to adjust, so don't bug him or pester him. Most of the die-hard fangirls didn't hear the rest of what Iruka said except Sasuke was alive and was going to go straight to him and ignore Iruka. Iruka sighed knowing only a few listened to him. May I ask who or what group did? Naruto asked, making the others look at him. Sorry Naruto, that's classified information. Iruka said as Naruto nodded in understanding. Kurama, who was bored, got out of his jacket. She yipped and chased her tail, making a few giggle at the fox's play. Naruto patted the desk as Kurama followed his hand boredly but looked excited. Deception was the best tool, of course. Kurama lightly nipped Naruto playfully on the finger, chewing on him. Naruto didn't mind as he was paying attention towards Iruka. He already knew everything that Iruka was talking about but listened so he wouldn't be punished. Kurama lightly laid on his hand the rest of the day as Iruka was finishing his lessons. Once the bell rang to signal we were dismissed, Naruto bolted out and went to his house to check on the clones. Naruto got there to see a stack of scrolls in a finished and in a not checked pile while the clones were reading and studying them. Naruto dispelled them and made more clones to practice them, while the real Naruto and Kurama went with their physical routines. This was their routine for the whole full year since they started training on his birthday. Naruto went into his mindscape where Kurama was waiting for him. She said that she had 2 gifts for him. Naru, come here, Kurama said, waving him over. Naruto complied and walked over to Kurama as she pulled him into her lap. She smiled as she lightly pet his hair. I will be giving you another part of your bloodline, she said lightly, making Naruto smile lightly as she continued to pet him. And a sword, she said as she summoned a sword. It had a blood handle with a weird-looking purple gem on the bottom tip of the sword. The blade was made out of metals of a star. I call it Meteor, she said as she handing him the blade. The blade will be next to your bed, Kurama said as he nodded. Kurama lightly pressed her hand against his head, making it glow. Once it stopped, Naruto's eyes changed back to the purple color he had that one day. He looked around and saw everything more clearly. This is very similar to the Sharingan. You can predict and copy others' moves and see chakra. However, I added that you can see in the dark more clearly, she said, making Naruto hug her tightly. Thank you, Kura-chan, Naruto said, nuzzling up to her. Kurama lightly blushed but loved the affection of her future mate. Now that she thinks about it, she has to turn him into a demon. She pushed back those thoughts as Naruto didn't know what was with the mark. Naruto pulled away from Kurama and got out of his mindscape. He looked to his left and saw the sword Meteor and picked it up. He really liked the blade. There's another thing for that blade. If someone tries to take it, insert cackle. Well, it doesn't bode well for the thief, Kurama said, making Naruto nod. He got up and did his normal routine and raced Kurama to the academy. Kurama won, making Naruto pout. Who would have thought a 10,000-year-old demon won against a 6-year-old? Naruto chuckled lightly at the thought and went into the class with his sword strapped to his back in a sheath. Hey Dobi, where did you get that sword? Kiba asked, making Naruto sigh. I guess I will answer you, but please call me by my name. It was a gift, Naruto answered. Give me that sword, Sasuke said, making Naruto look at him with questionable eyes. Why? Naruto asked as Sasuke got annoyed. I need it more than you do. That blade should be wielded by the best, Sasuke answered smugly with a showers of yes from his fangirls. Sorry, but I will cherish my sword seeing it was a gift, Naruto said, not fazed by the I'm a Uchiha look. Just give me it, he said as he touched the sword and got zapped and fell unconscious. That's why you don't touch people's things, Naruto said. The girls accuse him of cheating. Naruto sighed as he put his head down and fell asleep. Naruto woke up an hour later to see Iruka still teaching while Sasuke was glaring daggers at him. What did I do to him? Just cause he's the last Uchiha doesn't mean he gets everything and anything, Naruto thought as the day went by. Once it was lunch, Naruto sat by himself again eating his ramen as Shino sat next to him. Hi Shino, Naruto said as Shino nodded a hi back. They silently ate as Kurama was lying on Naruto's lap. Once they finished, they waited for Iruka. Alright class, we will be testing how you can throw kunai and shurikens, Iruka said, making them cheer for no boring lectures. One by one, all of the civilian and clan kids threw their kunai. Most only hit 1/5 until clan heads started to go up. Hinata hit 3, Shino hit 3, Kiba hit 2, Shikamaru said it was too troublesome, Jno hit 3. and Sasuke hit 4. Naruto was last, and to be honest, he was bored. Naruto grabbed all kunais and flung them, hitting all 5 bullseyes. Sasuke was seething in rage seeing he was shown up. Cheater, lucky shot, all of the kids said, making Naruto sigh. Baruka smiled up at him and patted his shoulder, congratulating him. Naruto smiled up at his instructor, seeing that he's the only instructor who doesn't sabotage him. Sasuke was glaring at him as Naruto looked back confused. "Can I help you?" Naruto asked as Sasuke scoffed. Naruto walked over to Iruka. "Did I do something to him?" Naruto asked as Iruka shook his head. "Some birthday this is," Naruto mumbled as Iruka looked down slightly with pity. He knew everyone didn't like him because of his birthday, adults, and the adults just made it worse for the kids. About 90% of the village hates him while 9% tortures and beats him. The 1% only adds up to a few people. Iruka pats him on the head. "Happy birthday," Iruka said with a brotherly smile. Naruto smiled up at him as Naruto walked over towards the sparring arena to practice his kenjutsu. Everyone looked over at him a little confused. Naruto closed his eyes and channeled chakra to his eyes. He reached for his sword and unsheathed it. He opened his eyes with a serious face and began swinging elegantly. He flipped lightly as he hit the air while everyone was staring at how good he was with a sword. Once Naruto stopped swinging, he turned around after deactivating his unknown dojutsu. He turned around to see everyone staring at him. Hi?" Naruto asked as they got out of their world. Kurama was lightly cackling in her fox form at their faces but didn't say anything. Naruto, who was now 12, walked quietly towards the academy with Kurama at his side. She gave him the final gifts of the dojutsu, which was called the Rinnegan. She gave him each of the 6 paths every year. He just got the last path, which was called the human path, seeing he didn't need to practice with it much. His first path he got was the Diva path, which made it to where he had full control on gravity. The next was Preta, where he can absorb any ninjutsu. The third was Naraka, which made it to where he could summon the king of hell and turn empty or soulless bodies into paths. The fourth was Animal, making it to where he can summon powerful summons. The chameleon being the most powerful with its camouflage, making it become invisible even to dojutsus. The fifth was the Asura path, able to make your body out of a weapon, and the human, able to take out a person's soul for information, killing them. However, Naruto's eyes were not a ripple, it just turned his iris purple, which confused Kurama to no end, seeing that her father's DNA was exactly the same as Naruto's, well, not exactly, just from their iDNA. Naruto walked in with his sword strapped to his back and his cloak. The cloak looked identical to the fourth's except without the kanji for Yondaime, and a red muscle shirt. Naruto weighed a good 130 pounds without his weights, but with his weights he weighed up to 3 tons. He tried his best not to jump, seeing that when he lands he would create craters. He already had a mishap with his chair at his house. As Naruto walked in, all eyes were in him. Most girls blushed at the visible muscles. He had a visible 6-pack, making all the girls just have very, very naughty thoughts. Hinata, who was red as Uzumaki hair, fainted with a thunk. Naruto shrugged off the stairs when Kurama trotted around the room, making others try to get away from the so-called rabid fox. "She doesn't have rabies, you know," Naruto said as Kurama jumped on his desk. "Then why does everyone says she does?" the class asked. "'Cause Kiba started the rumor 6 years ago," Naruto said as everyone blinked. "Plus I would most likely be dead if she had rabies," Naruto said as Kurama licked his face lightly. Kurama, who grew the size of a medium-sized fox, was laying down on the table as Sasuke walked in with a running Sakura and Ino racing. "I win, Ino pig," Sakura said as she screeched for winning Sasuke's love. "Yeah right, forehead," Ino said as they began fighting for one of the 2 seats open next to Sasuke. Naruto got irritated and got up. He grabbed Sakura and sat her down next to Sasuke. Ino was about to retort when he grabbed her and sat her down in the other seat. "There, you're both next to your Sasuke," Naruto said as he sat back down in his original seat. "Troublesome blondes," Shikamaru said as Sasuke was getting used as a tug-of-war rope. Iruka walked into this site with Mizuki close behind. "Alright, we will begin the genin exams," Iruka said as all cheered except the silent-type ones. Mizuki passed out the papers. Naruto looked at the paper and sighed. He knew all the questions, but it was a genjutsu. Naruto used the release seal to get rid of the genjutsu. Mizuki was about to call out that he was cheating until Naruto beat him to the punch. "Iruka-sensei, there was a genjutsu on my paper," Naruto said as Iruka glared at Mizuki. "Thank you, Naruto," Iruka said as the other kids were saying yeah right or loser. Naruto did the questions and flipped it upside down so no one could cheat off him as he leaned back with Kurama in his lap. 30 minutes. Alright, time's up, Iruka said as Mizuki led the kids outside as Iruka picked up the papers. Once they were all outside, they began lining up to do the kunai and shurikens. Naruto was last. "You must hit 6 kunai and 4 shurikens to pass," Iruka said as they lined up. Most of them passed with a few being better than others. Kiba got 8 to 7. First number is kunai, second shurikens. Sakura got 7 to 6. Ino got 6 to 6. Shino got 8 to 7. Shikamaru got just 6 to 4 seeing he wasn't trying. Hinata got 8 to 8. As Sasuke got 9 to 8. Last was Naruto, who got handed blunt and rusty kunai and shurikens making him sigh. Naruto however got perfect score making everyone gawk at him. He must have cheated. "He can't beat my Sasuke," Sakura said making Naruto sigh. "How can you cheat in this test?" Naruto asked, shutting them up. The next test was taijutsu portion. Blah blah. Mizuki called the final match smirking thinking Sasuke could outdo the demon. Naruto Uzumaki vs Sasuke Uchiha. All the girls except Hinata screeched for win. "Ready to lose, Dobi?" Sasuke sneered. Naruto shrugged, going in his mother's taijutsu stance making Iruka raise an eyebrow. "I don't remember that stance," Iruka said before noticing there's no holes in his stance. Iruka nodded as Sasuke began in a normal academy stance. Naruto didn't look any impressed or unimpressed. Sasuke rushed at him making Naruto duck and block his punches. Naruto knocked him away making Sasuke come close to out of the ring. Naruto looked unimpressed at this making Sasuke angry. "Fight back," Sasuke said charging blindly from rage. "Rage is your own doing," Naruto said in a monotone voice and hit Sasuke out of the ring on the ground. Naruto looked at Iruka to call the match when he heard a jutsu being called out. "Fire style fireball jutsu," Sasuke said as Naruto about to dodge when he remembered others behind him. Naruto did one hand sign and water rose up. "Water style water wall," Naruto called out as the ball of fire was extinguished in the water. Naruto was angry. He could have injured or even killed the fangirls and other guys behind him. Naruto walked up to him and punched him to the ground making the clueless girls yell at him for, "You idiot, you could have killed the people behind me if I dodge," Naruto said lifting him back up to his eyes. "Foolishness will be your undoing in the shinobi world. Pick whose side you're on," Naruto said throwing him away from him. Naruto looked at Iruka calming down. "I apologize for using jutsu. I didn't want the others be injured or even killed," Naruto said as Iruka nodded. Sakura and Ino, who was behind Naruto when the jutsu happened, was reconsidering Sasuke. "Thank you," Sakura and Ino said as others thanked him. He waved it off as they went to last test. Ninjutsu. One by one kids went in and out with headbands. Naruto walked in after Sasuke, who was smirking smugly at Naruto. "Hope you failed, Dobi," Sasuke said as Naruto shrugged. Naruto went in and then out with a headband as Iruka and a seething Mizuki came out with the Rookie of the Year and Kunoichi of the Year gifts. "Alright, I'm proud of all of you for passing," Iruka said. "I will announce the Rookie and Kunoichi of the Year and give you these," he said as he held up 2 ninja pouches and 2 special headbands. "Kunoichi of the Year is Sakura Haruno," Iruka said handing her the pouch and headband. "The Rookie of the Year." Sasuke stood up smugly thinking it was him. "Naruto Uzumaki," he said as Sasuke cried in outrage. "How did that idiot beat me?" Sasuke said loudly. "In the year and exams was perfect," Iruka said making Naruto get up and grab the 2 items. Sasuke seed this Kurama cackled. Sasuke was lifting his leg to kick the fox before Naruto punched him in the wall. "Touch Kurama and you're dead," Naruto said as he was unconscious. Naruto quietly walked out of the building getting gasps from adults around seeing the demon brat passed. He went to his house where Kurama was going to tell him what the fox tattoo meant. He walked inside while Kurama started taking. "Do you want the short version or the long version?" Kurama asked as Naruto shrugged. "Short, I guess," Naruto said. "That's a mate mark for demons." Kurama said as Naruto blinked. Come again? Naruto asked. You're my mate. I marked you seeing your life and everything else. Kurama said as Naruto lightly nodded. So, if you die I die, and vice versa, but I can't die. She said as Naruto looked up at her. So I'm going to turn you into a half-demon, a immortal half-demon. Kurama said as Naruto fainted. Kurama shook her head in disbelievement. Kurama shrugged, thinking this would be the best chance to turn him into a half-demon. Once it was done with the genetics, his whiskers darkened and she guessed that his eyes are now slits. She shrugged it off as she laid him down on their bed. Morning, Naruto woke up feeling lightly refreshed and remembered what happened. That was a weird dream. Naruto said as Kurama laughed. That wasn't a dream, you're now a half-demon. Kurama said, making Naruto look in the mirror. Just as she thought, his eyes were now slits and his whiskers was darkened. Naruto, who was freaking out, remembered the mark. Why did you mark me? Naruto asked. Cause I like you, Naruto-kun. Kurama said as she licked him in her fox form. Are really? Naruto asked as Kurama nodded. Naruto hugged the fox tightly, not wanting to let go. Thank you for everything, Kurama. Naruto said. You're welcome, Naru. Kurama said, nuzzling up to Naruto. We should probably get going for your ninja eye card. Kurama reminded, making Naruto go wide-eye and change real fast, making Kurama chuckle. Kurama and Naruto went to the Hokage tower to get their picture. He rushed up to the top of the tower where the third Hokage and a guy with a camera was at. Oh, hello there, Naruto. Hiruzen said, making Naruto look at him for a while. Hello, Hokage. Naruto said, making Hiruzen frown. It wasn't the first time he has seen Naruto since 6 years, just that he's been avoiding all contact. Hiruzen shook it off and motioned him forward. Kurama hopped in his arms and up to his shoulders and was on his shoulders for the picture. Naruto was smiling towards Kurama making the picture. Naruto looked at the picture and nodded in approval. He walked out with a chance to train. Naruto went to training ground 9, seeing it was one of the best taijutsu specialists' training area. Yash, your flames of youth burn brightly. Guy said to his star pupil Lee, who looked like his wannabe clone. Excuse me, are you Guy? Naruto asked as they turned towards Naruto. That I am. What do you need, my new leaf? Guy said, striking a pose. Naruto's sweat dropped a little. I was thinking if I could train with you, seeing you're the best taijutsu specialist in Konoha. Naruto said as Guy was crying anime tears. Another pupil who thinks so highly of me. Guy said, looking towards Lee. Lee, Guy-sensei. Lee, Guy-sensei. A beach and a sunset appeared, making Naruto's eyes go wide. He touched the sand before freaking out. Holy crap, it's real. Naruto shouted. Guy turned towards Naruto. Yash, you may train with me and Lee in the flames of youth. Guy said as Kurama cackled at Naruto's misfortune. Put these on my new pupil. He shouted, handing him weights. Guy-sensei, I have weights on already, and they're chakra weights. Naruto said as Guy blinked. How much does your weights weigh? Guy asked curiously. 3 ton? Naruto asked as Guy's and Lee's jaw dropped. How much do you weigh? Naruto asked. I only have 600 on. Lee said. I have 1500. Guy said, still amazed. Oh, Naruto said, rubbing his head sheepishly. Well, I could teach you that. Guy said, making Lee look over. Yash, he must learn it. His youth is twice mine. Lee said as Guy nodded. I shall teach you the lotus techniques. Youth, Guy said, we first need to open your first inner gate. Guy explained as Naruto looked up confused. But the lotus techniques have more downsides than good. Naruto said as Guy sighed sadly. Alright, then you don't have to learn that. Guy said, thinking of other things. If that's your best shot for me, I think I will go with another sensei. Naruto said, regretting the youth shouting duo. Alright then, my youthful friend. Lee and Guy said, striking a pose. Naruto nodded before shining away from the duo. Once he landed, he sighed loudly. Never again, Naruto said to Kurama, who nodded. He crossed Guy off his list. Shouldn't you wait until you find out who your sensei is? Kurama asked as Naruto face palmed. I don't know what I would do without you. Naruto said, slapping himself mentally. You would die without your mate. Kurama stated matter-of-factly. Naruto hugged the fox. I know, he said as he picked up the fox. Let's get home, Naruto said as the little fox nodded. They walked across the path towards their house as a meeting was taking place. Kakashi Hitaki, or other words Kakashi of the Sharingan. Kurenai Yuhi, or other words Genjutsu Mistress of Konoha. Asuma Sarutobi, or other words one of the used to be daimyo guards of the Fire Country and the Hokage's son. Was all in the Hokage office picking their team. I would like Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Kakashi said boredly as Hiruzen looked over to him for a second of confusion. May I ask why all three of the top students? Hiruzen asked. Sasuke, for his Sharingan. Kakashi said, making him nod. Sakura needs to be bent into shape. Kakashi said as he nodded again. Naruto, because he's a rival between Sasuke that will push Sasuke forward. Kakashi said, making Hiruzen glare at him with a look of annoyance. I will let you have this team if you're not going to have favoritism. Hiruzen said, making him nod. Asuma Ino Shika Cho Trio. Kurenai Tracker and Assault. Hiruzen nodded in agreement to the teams and couldn't wait to hear their reactions tomorrow. Naruto was sitting on his chair passionately to see which team he was on. He wanted to be with Shikamaru or Shino, seeing they wouldn't bother him as much as a Sasuke fangirl or other guys. When Iruka came in without Mizuki, people were confused. Iruka-sensei. Where's Mizuki-sensei? Sakura asked. He is having time off. Iruka lied. Mizuki was caught stealing the Forbidden Scroll. He was executed on the spot. So, let's start by naming the teams. Blah blah 1 to 6. Team 7 Sasuke Uchiha. All the girls perked up. Sakura Haruno and Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's eyes flashed with rage in a brief account for the Hokage. Your Jonin sensei is Kakashi Hitaki. Iruka finished. Team 8 is Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino. Iruka said, making them all groan. Team 10 will be Hinata, Kiba, and Shino. Iruka finished as Junin senseis called for their teams. 3 hours later, Naruto, who was reading a scroll about his father's technique, the Rasengan, was slowly trying to learn how to use it while Kurama was on his lap. Sakura was looking back between Naruto and Sasuke. Seeing that Sasuke almost killed them, but he was her love and Naruto for saving her. And Sasuke, who was staring outside the window. Kakashi opened the door slightly to see that Sakura looked at him with anger. You're late, Sakura yelled, making the other two look over towards their sensei. Naruto shrugged and resealed his scroll. My first impressions. I hate all of you. Kakashi said, making Sasuke and Sakura face fault. Naruto shrugged it off. Meet me up on the roof. Kakashi said as he and Naruto poofed away. Kakashi looked at Naruto with a calculating expression. He knew Naruto was Rookie of the Year, so he shouldn't be surprised that he knew the basic Shushin. Naruto unsealed his scroll and began reading it. Kakashi wanted to see what he was reading until Sasuke and Sakura made their way up. Sasuke glared at Naruto for shining up here. Alright, let's introduce ourselves. Kakashi said. How do we do that? The smartest kunoichi of the year said. Say your likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams. Kakashi said. Why don't you go first? Sakura asked as Kakashi sighed. I'm Kakashi Hitaki. I like a lot of things and dislike as much. I have a few hobbies and a dream. H&M. Kakashi said, making Sakura sweat drop. Okay, you first, Pinky. Kakashi said. I'm Sakura Haruno. I like reading and... She looked at Sasuke before shaking her head. Cooking. I dislike bullies and Ino. My hobbies are reading and my dream is to be a good kunoichi. Sakura said, making Kakashi nod. She's not a fangirl like her file says. You're next, emo. Kakashi said, making Sasuke scoff. I'm Sasuke Uchiha. I like almost nothing and hate almost everything. My hobbies are training and my ambition is to kill that man. Sasuke said. Emo Avenger. Classic Uchiha. Kakashi thought. Your last whiskers. Kakashi said as Naruto didn't look away from his scroll. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto said blankly as the others waited for the rest. You don't need to know anything about me since you used rumors for my sake. Naruto said as he finished reading the scroll. He resealed it so no one saw it. Very secretive, hypocrite. Kakashi thought with the authors saying. Okay then, we will be going to do a test to see if you will be capable of being in a team, tomorrow. Kakashi said as Sakura retorted. What do you mean, sensei? I thought we passed our genin test. Sakura asked. You did, but that was the first way to lead out non-genin-worthy students. Kakashi explained as she nodded. Okay then, meet me at 6 a.m. at training ground 7. Kakashi said, turning around. Oh, and I recommend to not eat breakfast. If you want to puke. Kakashi said, shushing away. Naruto turned to the other two and shook his head. Naruto slowly walked away until Sasuke stopped him. How did you get Rookie of the Year, loser? Sasuke said, I'm sorry, my name's not Loser. Naruto said as he walked away without answering this question. Sakura walked away from the clearly ticking time bomb with duck hair. Naruto went into his house and dropped on the couch like a potato. Kurama leapt up on his chest and began to paw his chest. Are you okay, Naru? Kurama asked. No, first I get the emo Uchiha and Sakura. He said, groaning. Kurama licked his chin, making Naruto look at her. Let me teach you something new. Kurama said, she pulling the blonde up. Naruto sighed lightly. Hey Kurama, don't you have a human form you could use outside? Naruto asked. I do. Kurama said as a bright light covered the two. The 16-year-old that Naruto saw from his mind was in front of him. Naruto smiled at her as she hugged him. Hey there, Naruto. Kurama said and pulled away. Now, this technique is called Chibaka Tensai, Planetary Devastation. This will make a ball of earth from any size with its own gravity. This is how the moon was made. Kurama explained, making Naruto's jaw drop. Really? Naruto asked as Kurama nodded. Yes, so put your hands together like this. She said, putting her open hands against each other while Naruto followed. Then concentrate on your diva path and concentrate it in a ball. She said, making Naruto nod. He made a minuscule ball and little tiny rock around them began flying into the orb. The orb made a perfect sphere with cracks around it that was the size of his head. Naruto made a fist in his hand, making it compress to the size of his fist. He placed his hand under the floating orb and focused on his gravity chakra and made it follow his will. Naruto smiled. He found a way to have attacking orbs. He made another orb and compressed it further than the last, making it into a small piece of coal. Naruto blinked at the coal and thought more. I could compress it down to the nearest carbon. I can practically make diamonds. Naruto said, making Kurama nod. Yes, however, Chibaka Tensai is mostly for bigger objects, like ceiling. There is another ability called Heaven's Consult, but this can be more devastating than Chibaka Tensai. Kurama explained as Naruto quietly listened. Naruto went back to his now compressed coal and tried to compress it further. It slowly shrunk down into a small diamond the size of a peanut. Naruto was in awe at the diamond and smiled. He made 5 more stone orbs and compressed them into 5 more diamonds and put the 6 diamonds together and compressed them into each other, making it a good size. He smiled at Kurama's confused look but kept smiling. He placed it in his pocket, then turned around. Thanks, Kura, Naruto said, making Kurama nod, still confused. Naruto sighed before going back into the library, where he mostly spends his time. He grabbed a scroll. This scroll was labeled Hirishin, the Hirishin being one of 2 of the signature moves of the Yondaime. The other being the Rasengan. Naruto began studying it, going through it over and over before sighing. He had to be a better sealer before attempting this, or he might kill himself from the sudden places his upper or lower body might end up detached. He shuddered at the feeling of him being halved. Kurama felt this before chuckling, evil thinking. More toward tour training. For him, she cackled evilly. Naruto sighed at his mate's evil tendencies. He sat down on a desk and made a few shadow clones to read with him on a few books about sealing. At the end of the day, Kurama walked into the library to see a passed-out Naruto on his desk. Kurama slowly picked Naruto up and began to go up the stairs with him and lightly sat him and herself on his bed, and he snuggled closer to the warmth on the bed and took her scent in and smiled sleepily. Kurama kissed his head. She was 4 years older than him, so she slowly morphed into a 13-year-old version of herself and slowly stroked his wild hair out of his face. I love you, she whispered lightly as she fell asleep close to her mate. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to see a red-headed girl close to him and noticed she looked a lot like Kurama. He smiled slightly and knew she morphed younger for him. Naruto poked her, making her stir slightly and open her red eyes. Naruto smiled, making her smile back. Hey there, Naruto, Kurama said, sitting up slightly. Naruto looked over at the clock before paling. It was 8 a.m., 2 hours late. Naruto scrambled together his clothes and ran out with a fox behind trailing. Naruto arrived right when Kakashi did. Sorry I'm late. Me and Kakashi-sensei had a conversation, and he forgot the time. "Ne-sensei?" Naruto said, making Kakashi nod. Sasuke and Sakura didn't press on. Kakashi this time eyed the fox that was with Naruto but shoved it away in the back of his mind. "Alright, today we will be doing a test with these," Kakashi said, pulling out 2 bells. "Whoever doesn't get the bell, well, you will be sent back into the academy for another year," Kakashi said, making Sasuke and Sakura stir uncomfortably. For now whoever doesn't get the bell will not eat lunch while the others eat it in front of them," Kakashi said, making 2 of the 3 stomachs growl. Kakashi eyed Naruto, who smiled largely. Kakashi shook his head. "Now, let's begin," Kakashi said as they all jumped away. Kakashi tried to sense them. Sakura's there. Sasuke up there. Now where is Whiskers? Kakashi thought until he felt a presence behind him. He turned around and saw Naruto and Kurama. "HNN, you're weirder than the others," Kakashi pointed out and grabbed a hold of his book and began reading. "You know, you shouldn't underestimate an unknown enemy," Naruto deadpanned as Kurama yipped. "Ma, you're still a genin." Kakashi turned the page. "Ooh Sally, so naughty." Kurama growled at the clear pervert. "I would like to burn that first," Naruto said and held up his hand, making Kakashi raise an eyebrow. "Bancho Tene," Naruto said as his eyes flashed purple and the book flew out of his hands into Naruto's. Kakashi's eyes widened. That was pure gravity. He could have did that with the bells. "Wait. My precious." Kakashi cried anime tears as he watched his precious get burned to ash in amusement to the other 2 genins. "Now, I could do that with the bells. However, this test is rigged," Naruto said as he went into the fox stance on all 4s, making Kakashi stop for a moment. "That's ever weirder than the Inuzuka stance," Kakashi thought, but saw multiple holes. "So he's using his fox to help him fill the holes. Smart." Kakashi eyed him before Naruto disappeared in a blur of speed. Kakashi's eyes widened but then felt a kick to the leg make him fall. Naruto and a girl his age was about to drop kick him, but he replaced himself before that could happen. "Damn, we almost had him, Kurama," Naruto said. Naruto placed his hand towards Kakashi. "Come back, sensei." "Bancho Tene," Naruto shouted, and Kakashi was pulled back onto the field. His senses are on par with a Junin and a ninja dog. Who trained this kid? Kakashi was shocked. Sasuke, who was growling at the display of power, rushed in behind Kakashi and called out, "Fire-style fireball jutsu!" Sasuke shouted as a ball of flames raced towards him. Kakashi jumped out of the way with Naruto and Kurama. Naruto growled. Again, he could have been killed by his teammate. He got rid of the annoyed feeling and went after Kakashi with a kick to the chest, but was blocked. However, the force of the punch knocked Kakashi into a tree. Kurama, who was in her human form, smiled. She looked at the now unconscious pervert and grabbed the bells and brought them to Naruto. Sakura sighed slightly and Sasuke was glaring everything he could muster at the fox girl in blonde. "Good job, Kurama," Naruto said, grabbing the bells as Kurama went back to her fox form. Naruto walked up to the unconscious Cyclops and did hand signs. "Water-style water hose," Naruto said, spraying the Junins, making him jolt up. "Morning sunshine," Naruto said happily. Good job. Now who gets the bells?" Kakashi asked as Naruto shrugged and threw the bells backwards to the other 2, who caught it confused. "Why?" Sakura asked. "I can always do another year." Naruto shrugged. "You all pass," Kakashi said happily, making Naruto smirk knowingly as the other 2 were confused. "What's the usual team limit?" Kakashi asked. "For sensei," Sakura answered. "Then why would I make a 3-man team? This test was to put you against each other. However, the real purpose is teamwork," Kakashi explained as they all nodded. "Now, we will be doing some missions tomorrow. So meet me here at 7, Kakashi said as he poofed away. Naruto sighed, slightly annoyed at the Hokage. He kept handing out so-called missions. More like chores. The last mission they did was the damn devil that is disguised as a cat. "Hokage-sama, may we please have a higher mission? These are chores," Naruto asked as politely as he could muster. "You're a new genin. You're supposed to do these missions," Iruka said, making Naruto twitch in annoyance as Kurama shook her head. "I agree with the idiot," Sasuke said, getting a yeah from Sakura, who forgot that he almost killed her with a fireball 3 weeks ago. Naruto shook his head thinking she could have changed. Guess not. Kurama just wanted to rip her head off at times. Sasuke didn't give a damn except that he needed to be ready to achieve his goals. Kakashi just read through his smut with a few perverted giggles. Hiruzen finally sighed and chucked Naruto a scroll with a protest from Iruka. Your mission is an escort mission to the land of the waves. Hiruzen said as a man with a sake bottle walked in. These are my escorts? Hick, they are nothing but gakis. And what's with the chipmunk? Tazuna said, clearly drunk, making Kurama twitch. She's a fox, and don't underestimate us. Naruto said, making him nod. Naruto looked up at Kakashi. Meet up at the gate in an hour. Kakashi said, poofing away. Naruto shrugged and shushined with Kurama while Sasuke was seething at them, knowing that Jutsu Uchiha doesn't. Naruto walked into his house as Kurama changed into her 13-year-old form. Naruto was packing a few storage scrolls and ninja tools while Kurama walked up behind him and hugged him. Yes, Kura-chan? Naruto asked, tilting his head. Kurama shook her head, resting it on his shoulder. Naruto finished packing and noticed he had 5 minutes. He shushined towards the gate and landed by Sasuke, who was sitting against a tree. He jumped slightly when he saw Naruto but went back to normal. They waited until the rest came. I'm surprised, you're not late, Naruto said, making Sakura nod and Kakashi sweat drop. I'm always on time for missions, important ones. He added after seeing their clear faces that said, liar. Naruto waved it off as Kurama was on his shoulders. They started walking off towards the direction of the wave country. Naruto made another small orb of gravity and began pulling rocks towards it. They looked at him like he was crazy before he compressed it, making a perfect sphere of the rock. Kakashi looked quizzically at it. What's that? Kakashi asked. This is a technique from my bloodline. I'm able to make a sphere made of gravity and make spheres from them. That's actually how the moon was made, Naruto said, making Sakura's and Tazuna's jaw drop. Kakashi's eye widened but Sasuke scoffed. It can't be that great, Dobi. Sasuke sneered. I could show you, but it's quite destructive, Naruto said as Kakashi held up his hand. We're good, Kakashi said. He knew Naruto was not joking, seeing as his fox had a glint in her eyes. They kept walking before Kurama got bored and transformed into her human form. What's up, Kurama? Naruto asked. I'm bored, she said, making the group's eyes widen. Yo, you can talk? Sakura asked, making her deadpan. I can do more than most foxes, she said, making Kakashi eye narrow slightly. He knew there was something different about her than most foxes. He just couldn't put his finger on it. Dumbass. They kept walking until Kurama and Naruto spotted a puddle and almost burst out laughing. Kurama smirked as they passed it. 2 men with cloth in front of their faces popped out of the water. Sasuke and Sakura froze when they saw a chain rip through Kakashi. Sensei, Sakura shouted. Tazuna paled, thinking they were screwed until the Chunins fell limp dead. Behind them was Naruto with his eyes purple. Gato, Naruto whispered in disgust, making Tazuna tense. Kakashi-sensei. These two were after Tazuna, however I know the reason, Naruto said, smiling. He went over to Tazuna and placed his hand on his shoulder. You're doing a good thing for your village, Naruto said as Kakashi appeared, still confused at what happened. I used my bloodline to sap the information, killing them in the process, Naruto said, making Sasuke attention direct at Naruto on the word bloodline. Monster, Sakura screeched, making Kurama raise an eyebrow. And you want to become a shinobi? Shinobis kill girly, Kurama said, making her scoff. You're just a dumb fox. What would you know? Sakura sneered. More than you, apparently. Kakashi deadpanned in a whisper, which Kurama and Naruto heard, being a demon race. They laughed at the joke, getting crazed looks from the group. Kakashi whispered something. Kurama said, sticking her tongue out in a cute way. Kakashi nodded as Sakura was staying as close as Sasuke as possible, saying, Protect me, Sasuke-kun. They headed off until they reached a boat. They got on while the boatman told them to be quiet. They got a clear view of the bridge. I'm impressed, Kakashi said, making Tazuna beam with pride. Once they landed, Sakura stayed away from Naruto, seeing as he killed with no remorse. They kept going until Kurama and Naruto heard a spinning sound, making them shout, Everyone down. They shouted as they went down as a second went by until a sword came above them. The sword hit a tree with the FFTHUNK sound. Naruto looked up immediately recognizing the blade from the bingo book. You have a sharp genin there, Hitaki. A voice loomed. Zabuza Monomochi, demon of the mist and master at silent killing. Wouldn't mind you being my sensei. Naruto joked, making Kurama scoff. Thanks, kid. Kurama deadpanned mentally. You have a lot of information on me, Whiskers. The newly named Zabuza stated, making Naruto shrug. Bingo books. Very reliable. Naruto stated, making Zabuza shrug. Mind me taking your Gaki Kakashi? He's good. Zabuza stated with a humorless glint in his eyes. Kakashi deadpanned, looming at Naruto. Good job, Naruto. Kakashi sighed after getting a grin from Naruto. Zabuza rested his blade on his shoulder before sending out killer intent. Naruto's fingers tensed, but it went away. Sasuke and Sakura were panting while Kakashi's eye twitched. Zabuza jumped on top of the water. Formation, Kakashi said, making Naruto shrug. He jumped next to his teammates with Kurama in her human form. Hidden Mist Jutsu, Zabuza shouted as a mist was summoned from the chakra pressure on the water. Naruto activated his Rinnegan with meter in his hands. 8 points. Which one should I go for? Zabuza's voice echoed around the mist until Naruto and Kurama felt a presence. Naruto blocked the swing of his sword with meter. You're good for a normal Gaki. Zabuza stated, that's not all I can do. No brows. Naruto said, making Zabuza's eyes twitch. He suddenly felt a wave of chakra until Naruto said 2 magic words, making him fly. Shinra Tensai. Zabuza flew back and hit trees on the other side of the pond that he used his jutsu on. Naruto's jutsu also seemed to clear the mist. Good job, Naruto. Kakashi said as Sasuke and Sakura snapped out of their stupor. Kurama felt another presence and noticed Zabuza's body was gone. Naruto let out a sigh. He looked up at Tazuna. Where's your house at? Naruto asked, making Tazuna walk on the pathway. About 10 minutes later they arrive. Naruto slowly crashed on the couch with Kurama following, jumping on his stomach in her fox form. Naruto smiled slightly when he felt Kurama curl up around him. He slowly passed out while with the others. Sasuke was noticeably seething from the power Naruto has. Sakura was going with Sasuke and Kakashi was getting earload from Sasuke. Tell that Dobi to give me his sword, Sasuke said forcefully. No, that's his sword, Sasuke. Kakashi lectured. That's how he got his power. I must have it, to kill him. Sasuke being forceful. No, Kakashi said and went off to find a peaceful place to read his book. With Zabuza. Damn it, what did that kid use? Zabuza ranted. Whole Hiku watched on, slightly amused. What did he do, Zabuza? Hiku asked. He did a blowback force. His eyes turned purple. Zabuza ranted more while Hiku pondered. I don't know any dojutsus except the Sharingan and the Byakugan. Hiku stated. So you failed, Gato said, coming around a corner with 2 guards. I underestimated that Gaki, Zabuza stated with a scowl. One last time, Zabuza, or you're off the job. Gato scowled and walked off. Naruto was laying down on a futon when he woke up. He looked around until he noticed Kurama in her human form snuggled up to him. He smiled slightly while thinking, I guess I am falling for this vixen. He thought until he noticed her stirring. Naruto smiled brightly at the red slitted eyes starting to open. Hey there, Kurama, Naruto said, making her smile, and snuggled closer. Morning, Naru, she said before Naruto stretched slightly. Kurama looked up and grinned. She pounced on the unsuspecting blonde and straddled him to the futon. Kurama interrupted him with her lips, making Naruto's eyes widen for a brief moment before he melted in the kiss. He kissed back, making her grin under the kiss. She pulled off and panted. Best first, kiss? Kurama said between pants. Yeah, he sighed in comfort. Naruto got up with Kurama, who morphed into her fox form and snuggled up close to him. He walked downstairs and noticed the rest of the team were eating breakfast. All good mornin', give me your sword. Sasuke cut off Kakashi, making Naruto twitch. No, Naruto said simply. What? I'm a Uchiha, and you're just a clan less, Dobi. I deserve that power. Sasuke ranted, making Naruto and Kurama look at each other before bursting out in laughter. What's so funny? Sasuke growled. You think? Laugh, that my strength comes from my sword. Naruto said, still laughing. Well, of course it is. Sasuke smartly replied. I gained my strength through blood and sweat. Naruto said, making Sasuke and Sakura scoff. Yeah right, that told him off. Naruto sighed before finishing his food and walked off with Kurama following. Sasuke finished fast and followed the blonde. Naruto was in the middle of the clearing until Sasuke, come out, I will show you, Naruto said, simply making Sasuke come out. Naruto unsheathed his sword and stuck it to the ground. He then pushed chakra into his hands and made a Rasengan. This is all from my training. Nothing has been given to me, except my sword, which was a gift. Naruto said and thrusted the Rasengan and hit the tree. It blew the tree to splinters and covered the trees behind the tree. He blew up in splinters. Sasuke's eyes widened. Now please, stop trying to say my power was given. Naruto grabbed his sword and began walking again, leaving Sasuke to slightly fume. I need that power. He ignored everything he said. Sasuke began walking back to the bridge builder's house and saw Sakura and Kakashi waiting for them. Where's Naruto? Kakashi asked. He went training, Sasuke said, still plotting ways to take the power. Kakashi rolled his eyes, seeing his smirk. Alright, let's train, Kakashi said before leading the two genins out into the forest where Sasuke came out from. We will be learning to climb a tree. With no hands, Kakashi said. 1 week later, after the training with his genin team, Naruto came back and he confronted Naruto. Not surprised that Naruto knew tree walking already, he didn't pester him. However, they started to head towards the bridge without Naruto seeing, as he had chakra exhaustion from late night training. Once they got there, they saw a mist with all of the workers unconscious. Kakashi was about to look if anyone was conscious until a chuckle was heard around the bridge. The team went into a taijutsu stance. Where's that blonde Gaki? I got a score to settle with him, Zabuza said, making Sasuke scowl. Why fight that weakling and fight a Uchiha? Sasuke boasted. Really now? Zabuza said before looking back. What looked to appear a hunter nin with a mist mask. Hiku. Entertain the Uchiha, Zabuza stated before rushing at Kakashi. As you wish, Hiku said and rushed at Sasuke. With Naruto, it's basically a cannon fight until Naruto arrives, you all know it. Naruto jolted awake when he heard a massive bang from the front door. He and Kurama rushed in to see two thugs holding Tsunami and Inari rushing at them with a kitchen knife. They easily threw him away until they felt something stab both of them in the back. They looked behind them and their last sight was purple eyes glaring at them. They fell dead while Inari rushed into his mother's embrace. Thank you, Naruto, Tsunami said as Naruto bent down and ruffled Inari's hair. Your dad would be proud, Naruto said, making their eyes widen with tears. You were very brave, just like your father, Naruto said before he and Kurama disappeared. Bridge. Sasuke was panting, exhausted, while his eyesight became strange and he looked around confused until the fake hunter ninja voiced her sights. So you have a bloodline too, Hiku said, making Sasuke grin. Yes, with this I will kill Itachi. Until he felt a senbone hit his pressure point in his neck, making him fall over in a death-like state while Naruto appeared. At least he's not dead, Kurama deadpanned. So you're the one who saved Zabuza? Naruto asked, making Hiku nod. You only look a year older than me? Why are you with a guy like Zabuza? Naruto asked, making Hiku flinch behind the mask. He's my precious person, Hiku said quietly. He's the one who took me in, she said. I see, Naruto said before smiling slightly. If only we met under different circumstances, we would have been the better of friends, Naruto said, making Hiku look up confused. I guess you're right. She went back into her mirror until she heard chirping. She looked over and saw Zabuza pinned by dog summons. I guess my time has come, Hiku said, making her disappear from the mirror and in front of Zabuza, taking the full force of the blow. Zabuza raised his sword, intending him cutting both Kakashi and Hiku in half. Kakashi grabbed Hiku and pulled away before the swing hit them both. Naruto, who saw everything, was enraged and disgusted by the fact he would have killed his partner to kill another. He was about to shout until they all heard clapping. Well done, Leaf Nen. You killed the apprentice. A voice all too familiar with Zabuza and Tazuna. Gato. Zabuza snarled. Kurama was slightly appalled, but she began working on tending to Haku's wounds. Stop, Hiku uttered, but Kurama kept doing hand signs. Demon-style fate undone, Kurama whispered for no one to hear. A purple glow went around her hands and around the wound. Meanwhile, go boys. Whoever brings me the girls, He licked his lips. We'll get triple the pay, and to mess with them. Gato finished his line, making the temperature around all of them drop. Courtesy to Naruto. Naruto's eyes shot up to reveal a sight making everyone gasp, even Kurama. So it's finally complete, Kurama thought before going back to Haku. In his eyes was a rippled pattern that was an eerie grayish purple that seemed to glow. However, in the first circular line in the eerie eye, 3 combos like the Sharingan was in the ice pattern. However, right before their eyes, the grayish purple turned blood red. You're worse than scum. I will bring you to hell myself. Naruto shouted and brought his hand up and channeled his diva path. In his hands was a small black ball of gravity until it split and shot around the bandits. Naruto's eyes glowed and said one word before everything went to hell. Consume. His hand made a fist. The balls of gravity seemed to glow until all of the bandits were ripped apart from the gravity, pulling them in opposite directions. Naruto was slightly thankful that most of them was in the mist. Naruto's eyes went back to blue and he fell over unconscious. Zabuza and Kakashi were slightly pale when they saw his eyes. They heard myths, but they always thought the legendary Rinnegan was a legend. Kurama was slightly taken back by the new change in the Rinnegan and the new jutsu called Consume. She saw the effects of the jutsu and felt nauseous. Sakura couldn't see and Sasuke was faking death. Haku slowly sat up when Kurama was finished. She slowly got up and pulled the senbones out of Sasuke's neck. Kakashi smelled the gore and looked over at Zabuza, who got the silent message and dispelled the mist. He wished he didn't. He was called the Demon of the Bloody Mist for killing all of his classmates to pass the Genin exams. But this was in one jutsu and body parts were literally everywhere. The most attached was the head and torso, which he can only make up 2 people. Kakashi, he was afraid for his student's sanity. He grabbed his student and jumped away from all of the gore and did hand signs and washed away all of the gore. Kurama went over to Kakashi and picked up her mate and did another hand signs before her hands went green. She put it on his forehead and took a breath and exhaled. Naruto's eyes slowly fluttered open. Congratulations, my kid. You completed your Rinnegan. Kurama whispered to him, making him smile slightly, but remembered what he did. Kurama saw his green face and rubbed his back. Don't think it was wrong. Kurama started and saw his confused look. They were going to rape every girl here. Even me in this body. Kurama reminded, making clutch his fists in agitation. Naruto. Kakashi finally came over after talking to Sakura and a now conscious Sasuke. How are you holding up? Kakashi asked. They deserved it, Naruto said, making Kakashi nod. He agreed. Sasuke knew something happened, so he got up and walked towards them with Sakura in tow. What happened? Sasuke asked. Gaki wiped all of the thugs and Gato out in one go. Zabuza said before looking over to Naruto. Who would have thought the legendary Rinnegan was inherited by you? Zabuza said, making Kakashi nod. Rinne, what? Sasuke and Sakura asked. It's the legendary Dujutsu that was believed to be the Dujutsu of the Sage of 6 Paths. Zabuza explained. Sasuke once again wanted the power. Give me your eyes, Sasuke said, making them face fault. Haku sighed before hitting the same spot she did and made him fall over. Is he always like this? Haku asked, making him nod. Well, I guess we're no longer enemies. Zabuza implied, making Kakashi nod. I guess not. Kakashi replied. What will you guys do? Naruto asked, making Zabuza look over at Haku. It is getting annoying to run more. Could we go to Konoha with you? Zabuza asked. Kakashi shrugged. The Hokage might put you on probation for a while. Kakashi said, making Zabuza nod. Well, it looks like we're going Haku. Zabuza said, making her nod. Mission complete, Kakashi said and bowed to Tazuna. Naruto smiled and closed his eyes to rest. Ton tilde mode tilde road tilde. Naruto opened his eyes to notice that he was in his room in Tazuna's house. He looked around and saw Kurama with a few storage scrolls packing stuff. He got up and hugged her from behind, making her eat. Morning, Kura-chan, Naruto said, making her smile. Morning, I'm finished packing. The rest of the team is downstairs waiting. Naruto nodded. He unwrapped his arms and grabbed his stuff and went downstairs, where a glaring Sasuke, an unhappy Sakura and a porn-reading Cyclops. Oh. Come on, Baka. Sakura screeched, making Naruto sigh until he felt something hugging his leg. He looked down and saw Inari. "Don't go, Ni-san," Inari said, making Naruto pat his head. "Don't worry, little Atu. I will visit as soon as possible," Naruto said, making Inari nod hesitantly. "Come on," Sakura screeched again. Alright, I'm coming," Naruto said and walked back towards Konoha with Zabuza and Haku. Once they arrived at the gates, Kakashi reminded himself of what to report. He shuddered at the things he would say. They walked to the Hokage Tower and opened the door to the room. Team 7, and extra? Hiruzen rose an eyebrow at Zabuza. "Report, please," Hiruzen said, making Kakashi replay what happened until he got to the bridge. "After Haku saved Zabuza from my lighting blade. Kurama here saved her after seeing Gato betray them. However, Gato threatened to rape all the girls there, and Naruto awoke in the..." He paused and looked at Naruto for confirmation. "Rinnegan!" He yelled at Gato to send him to hell himself when his eyes turned blood red. I couldn't see what he did in the mist, but he said the word consume. Zabuza dropped the mist, and it was a bloodbath. And then we waited a day to pack, and now we're here. Zabuza wants to stop running," Kakashi explained. Hiruzen was surprised. He heard about the Rinnegan. "I see. Thank you. Zabuza, you will be on probation for 3 weeks. Haku here isn't assigned as a ninja, so she will be hailed as a genin under apprenticeship towards you." Zabuza nodded in agreement. "Naruto, your bloodline has to be taken up with the council." Naruto scowled. He knew they would try to pair him with a girl or he would be breeding stock. He sighed but nodded. "I also have a bloodline, the ice release," Haku said, making him nod. "You too," Hiruzen said, making her nod. "Anbu, tell the council members to be in the council room in 15 minutes. Hiruzen said, making the Anbu bear nod. Dismissed except Naruto, Haku, and Zabuza, Hiruzen said as the rest of Team 7 left. "Come," Hiruzen said. They slowly walked out of the Hokage's office and down a few doors until they entered a large room. There was chairs with tables and chairs labeled with 3 chairs that stood out to be the elder spots. One after another, clan heads, the 3 elders and civilian council members entered. "Why have we been called Hiruzen?" Kaharu asked. The mist ninjas and Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Yes, why have we been called Hiruzen?" The other 2 elders, Danzo and Hamaru. "I never knew the elders had that privilege," Naruto commented, making the council look over at Naruto. "And what privilege is that, D-boy?" a civilian council member asked, calling Hokage-sama his first name. "The council has no power, or shouldn't, seeing as their advisors," Naruto pointed out, making the shinobi side smirk at the smart boy and the rest pale. Hiruzen coughed and getting attention. "That's true, Naruto-kun. Now why I called you all. Zabuza and Haku here." He paused to see their reaction. "Would like to become ninja here." Zabuza and Haku nodded in confirmation. Zabuza offers the skills of silent killing and swords master, and Haku here has a bloodline of ice release. A few hands shot up. "I say we give her to Uchiha-sama." Haku scowled. "I'm not marrying that prick," Haku said, making Naruto and Kurama snicker. "I'm marrying who I choose," Haku said, making them scowl. "We are the council," a fat merchant said. "Yes, your advisors," Naruto said again, making them scowl. "And what of the D-boy?" Haruno said. "He awakened a bloodline as well." "Naruto?" Hiruzen said, making him nod. His eyes morphed into the red Rinnegan with 3 combos. A few eyes widened. "That's..." The few sputtered. "The Rinnegan," Naruto said, making all of them gasp. "The Dujutsu of the 6 paths?" they asked with a hungry grin. "I call a vote," Hiyashi Hyuga said. A few raised eyebrows. "For a marriage contract between Naruto and my daughter," Hiyashi said, making Kurama scowl. "No," Naruto said simply. "I am already claimed," he said with a grin. "Then we enact CRA on you," Danzo said. "Sorry, but the person who is enacted on gets a choice, and I say no," Naruto said, making them grumble. "Fine, but what does the Rinnegan do?" Kaharu asked. "I will only give you one bit of information, and that is control over all 5 elements," he said, making them go wide-eye. "He deactivated his Rinnegan. Is that all?" Naruto asked. "Where did this bloodline come from?" the Nara clan head asked. "Mutation, perhaps. My parents did have a weird combination," Naruto said. "You're a orphan. You have no parents," Haruno said, making all of the shinobi's face fall. "I have to give someone the talk?" Naruto deadpanned, making them laugh. I came from my mother, but she died during the Kyuubi attack. Same with my father, Naruto said. Who are your parents? The Inuzuka clan asked. You have to ask Hokage-sama. Anything else? Naruto asked Hiruzen, who shook his head. Okay. Bye Haku and Zabuza. Naruto waved and left. Naruto clicked his tongue in an impatient manner. It's been 3 weeks ever since the C rank that turned A ranked, and they went back to doing D ranks. He sighed slightly and looked over at his other teammates. Sakura didn't improve at much of anything except to get under Naruto's skin. Sasuke kept pestering him and Kakashi to give him power, making Naruto scowl and leave the seething Uchiha. Kakashi didn't help much of either. Once this day was over, he was going straight to Zabuza and going to ask him to train him in the art of silent killing and the sword. He might actually learn something from someone other than Kurama. It took 30 more minutes until Kakashi shushined in and proceeded to tell them they had a day off, making Naruto sigh in relief and annoyance. Relief seeing that he has more time with Zabuza, and annoyance seeing that he let them wait an hour to tell them that. He got up a shushined towards Haku's and Zabuza's apartment before Sasuke could demand him power. Naruto appeared via leaves in front of an apartment complex. He walked up to the number 4 and knocked. He heard shuffling before he saw Haku open the door. Oh hey Naruto, Haku said. Hey Haku, is Zabuza here? Naruto asked. Yeah, Haku motioned to come in. Who's here now? Zabuza groaned. Zabuza, could you train me in the art of silent killing and swordsmanship? Naruto bowed, making Zabuza blink before chuckling. Sure Gaki, but rule number 1, don't bow to me. Time skip. It's been a week since Naruto seemingly disappeared from Team 7 and they were waiting in front of the academy for the Chunin's exams. Sasuke and Sakura waited until they saw a blonde appear right next to them. He wore a red shirt with black undershirt with dark blue shorts, with blue eyes and 3 defined whisker marks with a fox next to him. Let's go, Naruto said, ignoring the glares from Sasuke for power and Sakura for being almost late. They walked in and walked up a flight of stairs to hear arguing. Let us in, a Mist Genin team shouted, making Sasuke look over and snort. Pull down the genjutsu. Sasuke sneered, making Naruto fave palm. Good job Sasuke. You made it more difficult for us, Naruto said, making him shrug. The teens walked in and they all looked around. All of the killer intent was directed towards them, making him shake his head. Kurama seeped out killer internet, making them freeze for the moment of intent the fox produced. Naruto looked over to the door and noticed a familiar chakra signatures. In came teams 8, 9, and 10. Looks like we're all here, even the loser. Kiba sneered, making Naruto sigh. What did I do to you? Naruto asked, making Kiba open his mouth but couldn't think of anything. Thought so. He rolled his eyes. A gray-headed teen walked up to them. Hey, you guys should keep it down. Name's Kabuto. Kabuto said. Kurama sniffed and slightly growled. He smells of snakes. Kurama mentally said. I'm like a veteran in these exams. Seen it's my 7th try. He blushed in embarrassment. You must suck. Kiba laughed, making Kabuto leak a little killer intent. You must have a lot of information, Kabuto-san. Sakura commented, making him nod. He pulled out a deck of cards. Yes, these are info cards. Everything I know about someone will come up. He pulled one out. Try it. Name someone. Kabuto gestured. Naruto Uzumaki and Gaara of the Sand. Sasuke interjected. Let's see. He pulled out Gaara's card. Gaara of the Sand. He has 20 C ranks, and WoW a B rank. Apparently he hasn't gotten a scratch on him. Kabuto said, making them go wide-eye. Naruto Uzumaki. He has had 30 D ranks. WoW a rank. Apparently he has a dojutsu, and that's all. Naruto sighed while everyone began pestering. The loser has a bloodline? Kiba shrieked. Yeah, so? Naruto asked. You're a orphan. They all shrieked, making Kabuto and Naruto face fault. That doesn't mean I don't have a bloodline, Naruto pointed out. Ibiki walked in. Okay, sit down and shut up. He shouted, leaking killer intent. They all did while Naruto and Kurama sat down next to Hinata, who blushed. Kurama rolled her eyes at her mate's denseness. Alright, we will be doing 9 questions. If you get caught cheating, your score will be lowered. I will give you the 10th question after. Ibiki explained. Begin. He finished. They all turned their test over and started to think. while Sakura and Shikamaru did while the others found ways to cheat. About 45 minutes after. Alright, now for the 10th and final question. You will have a choice. Take it or leave it. If you take this question and fail, you will never be able to retake these exams. Ibiki said and was amused at the shock and outraged faces of the genins. You can't do that, Kiba shouted. There's people who took the exams more than once. He added, they got lucky. He shrugged, making Kiba grumble. A few teams left while Naruto and the rest of the rookie teams were sitting calmly except for a few twitching hands from Sakura and Hinata. They handled it and Ibiki spoke up. Alright, for all of you here, you all pass. Ibiki said cheerfully. What about the 10th question? Most shouted. This was a do or die type situation. Ibiki explained and showed him his scars. Now, wait for. He was interrupted by a ball of purple coming through the window. Naruto and Kurama sweat dropped at the banner. The single Anko Matashi. Alright maggots, follow me, she shouted and proceeded to jump out the window that she flew from, making the rest sweat drop. Ibiki sighed and waved them to follow the crazy instructor. Naruto shushined towards the forest of deer, knowing Anko she would be here. He met her before when he was younger. They played tag with Kanai. He shuddered remembering that he lost a lot. He turned to notice all the genins were front and centered. Alright, once you get into this forest here, you will have to retrieve both Heave and Earth scrolls. Extra scrolls are extra credit. Now line up for your scroll. She shouted, making them scramble a line. Naruto's team got a heaven scroll. Now get to your gates. Anko shouted and shushined towards the Junin lounge. Sasuke and Sakura decided to give it to Sasuke, while Naruto sighed with Kurama. I'm sorry you have to put up with them, Naruto. Kurama deadpanned. Don't worry, Kura-chan. He mentally replied until the gates opened. They shot forwards and began heading towards the middle. Kurama and Naruto sensed a team and they slowly waved them to follow. They did begrudgingly. They saw a team from the mist. Naruto and Sasuke knocked them out with a quick chop and grabbed the heaven scroll they had. Easy, now let's head to the tower, Naruto said with a smile. They kept leaping for tree branches to tree branches until Naruto froze. That chakra's signature, it's insane. Kurama, Naruto shouted mentally as Naruto and Kurama went back to back in the fox style. Someone's coming, and they're not genin level. Naruto stopped the other two. Coo. The little fox brat sniffed me out, did he? An ominous voice said as a grass genin came out from a bush. Who are you? Naruto questioned. Kurama looked behind her and noticed Sasuke and Sakura were rooted to the ground from the killer intent. Straight to the point. How about you guess, Naruto-kun tilde? The grass ninja asked with a sadistic smile. You reek of snakes, Orochimaru? Naruto asked, making the now revealed Orochimaru chuckle. You're good. Orochimaru purred evilly. Let's see then, shall we? Orochimaru finished and shot towards the half-demon. Naruto glared before activating the Rinnegan that was purple with the Tomo's surprising Orochimaru. Naruto sent a quick leg swing and hit the confused Sannin across a tree which was leaning from the force. Boo! Who would have thought you had the Rinnegan? Orochimaru said, drawing Kusangai. Naruto smirked. He pulled out Meter. Kusangai. The sword that can cut mostly everything. Sadly, Meter is not one of them. Naruto said and disappeared with Kurama in her human form with her own sword. Naruto's Rinnegan flared to life as shockwaves appeared from their clashes. Sasuke and Sakura finally got out of the daze and slowly snuck away from them and ran towards the tower. Kurama and Naruto noticed and scowled before smirking. Good, now I can go all out. He released his weights and disappeared in a burst, making Orochimaru's eyes widen at the easily cage-level speed. Kurama did the same and swiped at Orochimaru's head. He barely dodged and scowled slightly, knowing he wouldn't be able to win. I guess I must retreat. Orochimaru frowned and disappeared into the mud. Naruto and Kurama sighed before rushing towards the direction the others ran to. They reached them while they were next to the tower. Naruto sent a glare at the two who ignored him. They got in the tower and looked around. Open the scrolls, Naruto instructed, making Sasuke scowl at the command but did it anyways. Iruka popped out. Good, you got here safely, Iruka said, making Sasuke and Sakura nod while Naruto sighed. I need to talk to Hokage-sama, Naruto said. He's at the top of the tower. Haruka said, making him nod and shushin up to the towers until he stumbled upon a door. He opened it and Hiruzen was writing a few things with paperwork. Hokage-sama, we ran into Orochimaru in the forest, Naruto said, making him go wide-eye. Report, Hiruzen said sternly. Naruto explained the whole time in the forest and Hiruzen scowled at the fact that Sasuke and Sakura left them to fight off Orochimaru. I'm glad you're alright, Hiruzen said, making Naruto nod. Do not worry about Sasuke and Sakura's punishment. They will not be Chunin at the end, if they make it that far. Hiruzen reassured, making Kurama sigh. Good, she mentally groaned. Thank you, Naruto said as Hiruzen nodded. Naruto walked out of the office and looked around. He saw a few Junins and looked around before seeing Zabuza, Haku and Kakashi talking. He walked over and sat down next to Haku. Hey, no brows, Naruto said with a slight grin while Zabuza twitched. I told you not to call me that. Zabuza snapped. Sorry, Naruto rolled his eyes. So how was the forest? Kakashi asked, making Naruto sigh. Sasuke and Sakura left me to deal with a certain snake, Naruto said, making Kakashi's eyes widen. Orochimaru? He stuttered out, making Zabuza's eyes widen and Haku tilt her head. Who's Orochimaru? Making them face fault. One of the three Sanins that gone rogue, Zabuza said, making her jaw drop. Well, I held him off with Kurama while Sasuke and Sakura snuck away, he said, making Kakashi's eyes darken. I see. Well, after the exams I had to run them through the importance of teamwork, he said with a glint in his eyes, making everyone in the room shiver. They kept talking until Naruto got bored of the conversations and went into the rooms to rest in for the teams. Naruto laid down and waited as the days passed on, waiting until the time for the preliminaries. Naruto was standing up in the stands waiting as he watched the battles raged on. He looked over and scoffed. He saw Sasuke copying every and any ninjutsu and taijutsu styles he could get a hold of. The battles went on until the board stopped on two names. Naruto Uzumaki and Kiba Inuzuka come down, Hayate said as Kiba cheered, thinking it would be easy. Naruto looked at Kurama, who was shaking her head in disappointment. Naruto went down onto the arena where Kiba was ready and began boasting. Ima end this in one hit, he said and looked at Hayate. Begin, Hayate shouted. Kiba rushed in at a good Chunin speed and punched at Naruto, who ducked under as Kiba sailed past. You have pretty good speed for a normal genin, Naruto commented. I don't want to do a lot, so let's get this over with. I don't want Sasuke to copy my moves, Naruto said as Sasuke scowled at being found out. Kiba blindly punched at Naruto, who caught it and twisted his wrist. Kiba whimpered in pain before Naruto brought him down with a kunai at Kiba's throat. Yield, Naruto said as his blue slanted eyes seemed to glow. I give, Kiba said with a frown. Hayate called the match and they kept going until they were finished. I don't want to rewrite the whole prelims for multiple reasons. Alright, now here are the finals, Hayate said. Round 1, Naruto Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga. Round 2, Shikamaru vs Tamari. Round 3, Kankuro vs Shino. Round 4, Sasuke vs Gaara. Round 5, Winner 1 vs Winner 2. Round 6, Winner 2 and Winner 4. Round 7 and the finals, Round 5 versus Round 6. Everyone read out. Sasuke smirked at who he was fighting and looked at Kakashi, who groaned. He knew the council would berate him if he didn't teach him his technique. He sighed before motioning Sasuke to follow. Naruto knew Kakashi had a reason, so he rubbed it off and looked up at Hiruzen. He smiled at Naruto, making Naruto's face waver. He still had little to no trust in the old man. He walked over to him to be stopped by guards until the Sandaime led them off. Naruto walked over and slightly bowed. Hokage-sama, may I have the permission to train outside the village? Naruto asked, making the Sandaime nod. Yes, you may. Just be back here by the finals, Hiruzen instructed, making Naruto nod and swirl out in wind. Naruto appeared in front of the gates of the village with Kurama behind him. He saw the same gate guards as usual asleep, making him roll his eyes. He passed the gate and began running to build more of his stamina with his weights on. He looked behind him to see Kurama in her 13-year-old form chasing after him, making them smile. Kurama caught up to him and tackled him into the grass. You think you could get away from me? Kurama said after they stopped rolling. Naruto panted out a smile. No, of course not. He winked, making her chuckle. She settled her grip on his arms and laid down on his chest. Naruto sighed at the close contact and closed his eyes, feeling the wind on his face making him smile. "You know we should be training," Kurama said, making Naruto chuckle. "No, I mean," Naruto wrapped his arms around her. "Let's stay like this for a while," he said while Kurama mewed at the contact with her mate. They stayed like that for an hour, adjusting to lay down next to each other, heads touching. Naruto finally spoke. "Kurama, what does demons do? I mean, you turned me into one," Naruto asked, making her sigh. "My father, or our adopted father, the sage of 6 paths, made us like this. The eyes you have are a mutated version of his eyes. Anyways, each of us have a special trait. Since you're one of us, you will become a Biju like us, me." Kurama explained, "You will most likely become a kitsune, seeing as you're my mate and I made you like this." Kurama explained, "You will also have a special ability like us." Kurama added in an afterthought. Naruto nodded at all of the information. "Thanks, Kura-chan," Naruto said, making her tilt her head slightly. "For what, Naruto?" she asked, confused. "Everything, especially the one thing everyone wants." He paused, seeing no reaction. "To be with the one you love forever," Naruto said, making her eyes widen. "Yo, you mean?" She stuttered. "I love you, Kura-chan," he said, making her heart skip. She had tears slowly form and her mouth twitched in and out of a smile. It took a moment before she glomped him. "I love you too," she shouted, making Naruto smile. She pulled off of him before she kissed him directly on the lips. They stayed there for a while until they parted for breath. Naruto got up with Kurama coming up after him. They looked around until they began walking more towards where they were going before Kurama tackled Naruto. Time skip arena. Everyone was in the stadium. To civilians to hippies. Wait, what? To genins to Anbu. Everyone. Down on the arena floor, all of the finalists except Naruto Uzumaki was there. If Naruto Uzumaki does not show up in 1 minute, he is disqualified. Genma spoke up to the confused crowd and Chunins to he. Genma checked his watch. 10 seconds. Genma stated. 5, 4, 3. A plume of smoke appeared and Naruto and Kurama in her fox form was there. "Sorry, got held up," Naruto said with a grin, making Genma roll his eyes. "The first battle will be Genin Naruto Uzumaki and Genin Neji Hyuga. The rest of you, go back to the waiting area," Genma instructed. All of the Genins jumped away while Sasuke activated his Sharingan with a smirk. Kurama snarled her teeth at the Hyuga, who was looking at him impassively. "Begin," Genma shouted and jumped away to leave the two Genins staring at each other. "You should give up now. This, like any other fight, is defined by fate," Neji said as Naruto was unmoving by the fact. "If fate is real, then what do you think about me?" Naruto asked simply. "You're a loser and always will be, always the worst," Neji said, making Naruto chuckle, until it blew out in a full-blown laughter, confusing everyone. "If that's true, then what about past dead lasts?" Naruto asked, making Jiraiya in the stand smirk. "Little Gaki of yours is tricky," Jiraiya thought. "All the same," Neji said simply. "Really?" Naruto asked. "Jiraiya of the Sannin, how do you rate him?" Naruto asked, making Neji extremely confused. "Jiraiya-sama is the second to the best in the village, trailing the Hokage," Neji said. "Really? Well, he was the dead last of the Sannin," Naruto pointed out, making his eyes widen. "Fate doesn't exist, Neji," Naruto said, making Hiyashi Hyuga in the stands grimace at what will happen. "How would you know?" he shouted. "You never been bounded by a curse you can't escape," Neji shouted and pulled off his headband, showing the ~X symbol of the branch family. "This was branded on me when I was 4. On Hinata's 3rd birthday," he shouted and placed it back on his forehead. "You will never know." Neji was interrupted as Kurama transformed into her human form and jumped between him and Naruto, closer to Naruto. Neji noticed Naruto was shaking. He would guess rage. "Naruto, calm down," she said slowly. You say I don't know about being branded by a curse. I know how it feels," Naruto said and looked up to reveal his red Rinnegan. He looked at Kurama and nodded. He channeled the water in the air, until hidden mist jutsu. A massive chakra-infused mist rolled over the arena. Sasuke was mad that he couldn't see the fight or jutsus. Neji activated his Byakugan but was blinded by the massive amount of chakra. "Your eyes won't work in here," Naruto's voice echoed. Neji went into a defensive Jukin stance. Naruto and Kurama jumped into his field of vision and attacked him, kicking him off to the side. He hits harder than Guy-sensei. His thoughts before he hit the wall. Naruto led down the mist and Neji was seen in a wall, slowly getting out of it. You want defile destiny. He panted out, making Kurama go into her human form, and went up to him in a blink of an eye with her claws ready for strike. As Neji closed his eyes, he waited and felt nothing. He opened his eyes to see Kurama claw. Boo, she said, simply, making him faint. Kurama giggled before jumping towards Naruto while transforming into a fox. Shikamaru vs Tamari. Canon. Winner Tamari by forfeit. Genma announced as the crowd booed from the almost epic win. Crap, I need the chakra for the invasion. Kankuro thought. Proctor, I forfeit. Kankuro said, making more boos. Shino raised his eyebrow but shook it off. Next match, Sasuke vs Gaara. Genma announced, making the crowd go still. Sasuke walked down as Gaara appeared in a whirl of sand. Mother wants your blood. Gaara's voice echoes as sand came out of his gourd. Begin. Genma shouted and jumped away, knowing what that sand could do. Sasuke disappeared in a burst of speed and hit Gaara upwards before knocking him down. Lee was watching with slight annoyance of his clear moves he used. Sasuke grabbed Gaara before dropping him to the ground until sand spikes blocked. Use me, kill him. A voice echoed in Gaara's head. Gaara made a seal, making the sand ninja's eyes widen and the cage smirk. Why is Gaara using that now? Tamari thought. Oh no, this isn't good. Kankuro thought. Sand encased around Gaara in a sphere as a sand eye appeared above it. Sasuke rushed towards it, going to hit it until a spike came out of it. Sasuke jumped away with blood down his cheek. Sasuke jumped upwards onto the wall and made a few hand signs before his hand was encased with lightning. Guy looked over towards Kakashi. You taught him that move? Are you insane? Guy shouted. What is it, sensei? Ino and Tenten asked as Sakura watched with hearts in her eyes. The one jutsu Kakashi didn't copy, but create. Guy said, making their eyes widen. They knew the famous copy Kakashi. I had to. The council was on me. Kakashi defended. Zabuza and Haku watched in slight confusion. Kill the prick, or kill the raccoon, they thought with a slight chuckle. Sasuke rushed downwards and onto the floor. He rushed towards the sand and shouted, Chidori! It hit the sphere and penetrated it, making everything silence. What is this, mother? Gaara asked, feeling a warm liquid. It's so warm, and, wait. Gaara's eyes widen. It's my blood, he shouted, making a few eyes widen. Sasuke felt a pull and channeled more of his lightning chakra and shocked it until an arm of sand pushed him away. The explosion of feathers appeared, making every civilian go to sleep. All the ninjas yelled Kai, bursting chakra around them. Hiruzen looked at the cage as did the cage to the sandame. Shall we begin, sensei? The cage asked, revealing himself as Orochimaru as a square of purple appeared around them. Naruto kicked away a Chunin from sound and was back to back with Kurama. What's going on? Do you know Kurama? Naruto asked. Invasion from sound and wind, she said before throwing a senbon at Asuna Nin. Naruto nodded before he ducked from a kunai. Naruto, Kakashi shouted from another side of a few ninja. Me and Genma can handle this. You two go help Sasuke and Sakura against Gaara. Kakashi said before he dodged a punch. Right, they both shouted before jumping away towards where they saw the sand siblings retreat to. With Sasuke was dodging sand shurikens from the monster like Gaara. He dodged once again until he felt an arm around him, making him scream from the pressure. Intel, Asura's cannon, a voice shouted as a massive blue beam sailed past Gaara, grazing the arm, breaking it from Sasuke's hold. Naruto appeared with Kurama as a cannon-like object was from his arm. The cannon retreated into his arm before landing in his taijutsu stance as Kurama looked around to see Sakura pinned to a tree by a claw. Damn Shukaku, she cursed, seeing the hand slowly contracting on Sakura. Naruto flipped out of the way from Shukaku's hand before looking towards Kurama. He did hand signs before focusing on the trees and moisture before shouting. Water style, Biju's tornado. He shouted as a miniature tornado appeared in his hand before sending it towards Gaara. Expand, Naruto whispered, seeing Gaara not noticing the tornado. It expanded into a vortex of water, washing all of the sand away and into mud. Gaara shouted in rage before doing a hand sign and shouted, "Mother wants to play." Gaara shouted and his head fell until a booming crazed laugh echoed across the forest. Finally, "I'm free, baby." Shikaku swirled in and appeared from a sand tornado. Crap, Naruto deadpanned slightly before jumping away from a massive gust of wind. Naruto looked up to see Shikaku got a hold of Kurama. Always a idiot Kurama. Shikaku busted with a laugh, making Naruto boil in rage. "Put her down," Naruto shouted and jumped up at the one-tailed Biju. His arm reformed into a cannon. "Amari," Naruto shouted as a blue beam hit Shukaku's chest, leaving a large crater in the Biju's chest. Shukaku swiped Naruto away and sent him hurtling into the trees. "Naruto," Kurama shouted. Kurama looked back to the one-tailed raccoon who was laughing and was about to bomb him with her Biju bomb until YHAAAAAAA. A shout happened as a blinding flashlight shot towards the sky. 3 blue, red, and white lights, 9 total, shot out from the pillar before shooting right back into it. The pillar of light vanished as the lights dashed around each other before surrounding the area, and it glowed a light blue color. Before revealing a 9-tailed fox with light blue fur and red-tipped tails. "Can't explain, great, just look at picture, you did vote for it." The fox's eyes were the red Rinnegan, but instead of 3 combos, there was 6. The fox lifted its head and shouted, "Wind-water lighting style, combination jutsu." The fox's voice boomed as a torrent of water surrounded the 3 Biju. Lighting hurricane, the fox whipped its head as Kurama was pulled by gravity as the jutsu landed on the one-tailed raccoon. The water was getting shot out from the cyclone of water with a force of wind to back it up while lighting shocked the wet Biju. Gaara was shocked awake. "No, no, 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 I just got out," Shukaku shouted as his body crumpled to the ground as mud. The fox's eyes darted towards Kurama. "Naruto?" she asked hesitantly. The fox nodded and glowed slightly. Naruto was now wearing a light blue shirt with white edging with a jacket covering it which was black. Naruto's pants were light red with white edging around it. But the noticeable difference was white red-tipped ears and tails. 9. Naruto looked over to Gaara until he saw the other sand siblings. Why do you protect them?" Gaara whispered weakly. "To protect someone that is precious to me," Naruto said, making Gaara's eyes soften. "I don't have anyone precious." Gaara whispered. "You're wrong, Gaara. You're precious to us," Tamari said as Kankuro nodded in agreement. Gaara had the faintest smiles and nodded. Naruto smiled before waving them off to leave. "Kurama, I'm going to aid Hokage-sama. Go help Sakura and Sasuke," begrudgingly. He added after seeing her, "Really, face." Naruto bursted in a sonic boom of speed, making Kurama eyes widen before shaking her head fast and rushed towards the other 2. "Hiruzen, before." The Sandaime panted. He was way past his prime. He mused to himself until he saw Orochimaru appear right in front of him. "You're better than I expected, old man," Orochimaru taunted. Hiruzen chuckled a humorless chuckle until both the cage-level ninja froze in shock. They looked to their right to see 9 colorful lights dancing around each other while the one-tailed beast watched in confusion. The white fox was shown, making Hiruzen's eyes widen. "Naruto," he thought. "What is that? A 9-tailed white fox?" Orochimaru thought before a water cyclone obscured their vision. "I must finish this quickly," Orochimaru said before doing hand signs. "Edo Tensei in pure resurrection," Orochimaru shouted as 2 coffins arose from the ground. They opened to reveal the first and second Hokage, making Hiruzen's eyes widen. "Kai," Orochimaru said as the bodies opened their eyes. "Wah," they muttered before they went stiff. "Your senseis versus you," Orochimaru said until a sound boomed, breaking the purple seal for a moment. "Am I late, Hokage-sama?" a voice asked as they turned around to see Naruto in his new attire. "No, just in time, Naruto." He smiled, making Naruto nod. "I can take the first and second," Naruto said before blurring out of sight and hitting at the first Hokage. "You seem really confident," Tobirama said. "It is my dream." Naruto looked over, showing his Rinnegan. To become Hokage. He twisted his body to hit both the previous Kates away. "Kurama should be here in a few minutes, just need to hold them off," Naruto thought before dodging a few trees' roots. Naruto smirked before doing hand signs. Wood-style sapping roots. Naruto shouted, making Hashirama's eyes widen and look down to see roots sprouting at an incredible rate. He jumped away from the deadly roots until he had to dodge a tree limb. Bansho Tain, Naruto shouted, pulling Tobirama towards him while his Asura path took effect. Amari, a blue beam disintegrated the second Hokage. Naruto looked at the remains to see them rebuilding. He cursed, "Use your sap roots." Tobirama shouted while reforming. Right, he did hand signs rooting the second to the ground, sapping the chakra. Naruto turned around to be hit towards a tree by Hashirama. Naruto smirked before vanishing in a flash of white. Naruto's hand channeled chakra until he slammed it into the back of Hashirama. Rasengan, Naruto shouted, blowing him towards the original sap roots. He landed as roots grew around him. "You did good, young ninja," Tobirama said with a smile. "You will be a wonderful Hokage." Hashirama added with a smile. "Thank you, Lord Hokages." Naruto bowed before the reanimations whittled away. Naruto sighed before glaring towards the area where clashes are heard. Naruto flashed out of sight. Naruto appeared next to the Sandame. "I dealt with the other two," Naruto said, making Orochimaru's eyes widen. "How? They should have been able to beat you." Orochimaru shouted until he saw Naruto pull out meter. The barrier fell and Anbuz and Kurama appeared next to Naruto. Naruto smiled. "This is the end, Orochimaru," Naruto said, making Orochimaru smirk sinisterly. He did a hand sign for replacement jutsu, but he noticed his chakra gone. He looked down to see roots around his legs. "I will not be killed. I'm immortal," Orochimaru shouted before thrusting Kusangai towards Naruto. "Well, I'm sending you to hell," Naruto shouted as Kusangai stopped midair. "Shinra Tensai," Naruto said, making the sword be blown back as fast as a saw blade. The blade cut off Orochimaru's head. Naruto sighed in relief until he fell unconscious. Kurama caught him and looked towards the Sandame for explanation. "He fought the first and second Hokage," Hiruzen explained, making all the Anbu's eyes widen. "One of you take Naruto. I need to help the others," Kurama said, handing Naruto to Neko. Neko nodded as Kurama disappeared. Kurama flashed in front of a few of the genins before she began cutting down all of the sound and wind ninjas. She brought out her own version of meter and began to slice all of the ninjas until there were no more. All the genin and chunins there began to cheer as Kurama sighed in relief. "Who are you?" Kiba shouted, making Kurama sweat drop. "It's Kurama, the rabid fox you keep saying about," she growled. Kiba paled but couldn't retort when she poofed into her fox form and rushed towards the Hokage tower. A few of the genins were confused at the speed she never shown. Shikamaru shook it off, knowing something was off about the fox ever since she and Naruto went to the park ever so long ago. Kurama appeared in front of the tower before looking around to see a few civilians hiding. "We drove the invasion force out, it's safe to come out," she said, making the secretary stand up and sigh in relief. The Hokage walked in behind Kurama in his battle gear and sighed in relief. "Lord Hokage," Kurama said without looking behind her. "Thank you, Kurama," Hiruzen said, making her wave it off. "Where's Naruto?" she asked. "He's with the medic team," Hiruzen said, making Kurama glare. "And pray tell why you gave him to them who might kill him, seeing his unnormalities," she said, glaring, making Hiruzen sweat drop. "I put a genjutsu on him with a necklace bounded by it. No one should sense it," Hiruzen defended. Kurama nodded hesitantly. "Never knew you cared, Kyuubi-sama," Hiruzen joked, making Kurama snort. "I hope so. I didn't make him a biju for nothing." Hiruzen chalked at the words that left her mouth. "You what?" Hiruzen shouted, frightening everyone, making Hiruzen cough and found himself. "You did what?" he asked calmly, making Kurama snort in amusement. "You heard me." Kurama shrugged before walking towards the medic team's area. Kurama opened the tent that was set up for medic ninjas during the invasion and began looking around. She saw Naruto in his old-looking form and rushed over towards him. She looked down at his form before looking around to see anyone watching. She picked him up and channeled Yukai into him. She breathed in and out before she opened her eyes to see Naruto as a white fox with a red-tipped tail and ears. "Kurama?" Naruto asked mentally, making Kurama smile and nod. "Come," she said, and rushed away playfully as Naruto was hypnotized by her movements before following. Kurama and Naruto ran down the streets of Konoha, getting weird looks from all the pedestrians. They kept running and Kurama lead him into a forest before stopping. She turned around meeting Naruto's blue eyes. She slowly walked up to him before putting her head in the crook of his neck and under his chin. Naruto's legs wobbled with delight as his tail snaked around them both, as did Kurama's. Kurama opened her eyes before leading Naruto under a tree where it was big enough to fit. She swayed her tail before she went in while Naruto followed her. It was quite spacious for the two foxes as Kurama curled up to Naruto, mewing at all of the content. Naruto slowly closed his eyes, whispering one thing, making Kurama's heart do backflips. "I love you, Kura-chan," he whispered, making Kurama wiggle slightly. "I love you too," she whispered back, curling her tail up to his. The heat and scent of their mates slowly let them sink into a deep sleep. Council chambers. Hiruzen was in a number of things annoyed, tired, and did I say annoyed? He was in front of the council as they were frantic about the new Kyuubi taking over. "We must find the demon brat. He must have shown his true form. We must kill it." Shouts happened from the civilian side. The shinobi were silently talking to each other of what the new Biju could be and where it came from. The elders had a slight gleam in their eyes but stayed silent. "Enough," Hiruzen shouted, making them jump. "Now, the reason I called you here was the promotions of the Chunin exams, the new Biju that appeared, saving us from the one-tailed raccoon." Hiruzen pointed out, pausing for a moment. "Am I stepping down as Hokage?" Hiruzen said, making all go wide-eye except Danzo, who smirked slightly but went gone just like that. "I have already picked my successor," Hiruzen stated, making Danzo frown. "Who might that be, Hiruzen?" Danzo asked. "Tsunade," he said, making all eyes widen. "You can't be serious. She hasn't stepped in this village since her brother died," Kaharu said, making a few nod. "Why not Jiraiya-sama or Kakashi?" A few suggested. "Jiraiya has his spy network while Kakashi has a genin team," Hiruzen said. "Who will send for her?" Inochi asked. "Jiraiya and whoever he wishes for," Hiruzen said, making a few nod. "Alright, the new Biju is nothing to worry about. It did save us a lot of trouble from another fight with a Biju," Hiruzen said, shutting up the civilian side. "And the promotions will be decided here and now," Hiruzen said as a few began discussing before Sake Haruno stood up. "I say Uchiha-sama be promoted," she stated, making all of the shinobis sigh and the civilians nod. "What is the reasons?" Hiruzen asked. "He beat his opponents," some said, lying, making Hiruzen sigh. "I was watching and Sasuke did not beat Gaara. The invasion happened and stopped the fight before it ended," Hiruzen said, making a few grumble. "But he was going to," Haruno said, making the shinobi side sweat drop. "Right," Hiruzen said sarcastically. Shikaku stood up with a few papers. "Lord Hokage, if I may." Shikaku stopped to see Hiruzen nod. "I suggest grading the genins that dealt with the invasion, as well as the exams," Shikaku said, making the council nod at it being logical. "That being said, I think Naruto Uzumaki and Shikamaru Nara should be promoted," Shikaku said, getting an earful from the civilian side. "The demon brat," they shouted, making a few sigh. "Shikamaru lead all of the genins during the invasion. Naruto, however, in my opinion, should be promoted to special Junin," Shikaku said, making all of their jaw drops except for Hiruzen. Naruto, after helping Sasuke and Sakura against Gaara before the unknown Biju appeared, rushed to save Hokage-sama. He got there when Orochimaru summoned the first and second Hokage. He not only held them off while Hokage-sama dealt with Orochimaru, but defeated them, sending them back to the grave. Kurama was able to break down the barrier, letting the Anbus come in while Naruto killed Orochimaru. "Isn't that right, Hokage-sama?" Shikaku read off before asking. Hiruzen nodded. "Yes, he did a fine job defending the village, and very well saved my life," Hiruzen said, making all of the slack-jawed civilians find themselves. "But they tried to protest but knew they were cornered." "Alright, I think that's fair," Hiruzen said, making a few grumble. "Shikamaru is promoted to Chunin while Naruto to Special Junin." "Dismissed," Hiruzen said, making them disperse. Hiruzen sighed before walking out. "Naruto, when will you forgive me?" he thought before walking into his office. "Naruto." Naruto opened his eyes and saw he was cuddled up to Kurama's fox form. He moved slightly before noticing the roots slowly unwrapping around them. "Must be the Mokuton," he thought before he noticed he was in his fox form. He nudged Kurama's snout with his before she slowly opened her slitted eyes. She stretched slightly before yawning a cute fox yawn, making Naruto's heart flip at the cute noise. "Morning," she said, making Naruto smile. "Morning, Kura-chan." Naruto nudged her snout, making her close her eyes in delight. Naruto paused for a moment before remembering yesterday. "Why didn't we sleep here?" Naruto asked. Kurama smiled before nudging Naruto under his chin again. "Because you're my mate, my fox mate," she said before backing up. She looked outside of the tree roots to see it was sunrise and she jumped on out. She glowed before turning into her normal form. "How'd I do that?" Naruto deadpanned, making Kurama giggle. "Just focus on yourself, think what you want to be," Kurama instructed. Naruto glowed like Kurama and transformed into his fox-like human form before the necklace the Sandaime gave pulled up his genjutsu, which Kurama explained to Naruto quickly. Naruto smiled slightly. "I think I should forgive him," Naruto thought with a slight smile. Naruto pulled off the necklace, undoing the genjutsu. Kurama looked confused. "Put it on. I don't want you to be targeted for your add-ons," she said, making him smile. "I want to be me, Kurama. I want the world to see me." He looked down to his tails. "The white Kyuubi and the red Kyuubi," he said with a chuckle. "Weird pair we are," Naruto said, making her giggle. "Yes, we are," she admitted before Naruto flashed through hand signs before blurring out of wind with Kurama. Hokage office. Hiruzen sighed as he was talking to Jiraiya. "He won't do it, Jiraiya," Hiruzen said, making Jiraiya sigh. "I know he's mad at me for not being the godparent, but he's who I want," Jiraiya said, making Hiruzen rub his temples before Naruto and Kurama blurred into sight. Naruto chucked the necklace towards the Sandaime. "I want to be myself, old man," Naruto said, making Hiruzen's eyes widen. "Did he finally forgave me?" he thought with a smile. "Who's the Gaki?" Jiraiya asked, making Naruto look over. "Jiraiya of the Sannin, trained the 4th Hokage and my supposed godfather." Naruto glared slightly, making him freeze. He looked down and noticed the 9 white tails with red tips, making him go wide-eye. "You're the new Biju?" he asked, making him shrug. Kurama glowed once again to reveal her 9 tails. "We are a weird pair," she admitted. Jiraiya was slack-jawed but had a slight idea pop into his mind. "Biju's ICHA. He giggled in his mind before Naruto punched him in a flash. "That is what you get for abandoning me for research," Naruto growled. He knew all about Jiraiya's so-called spy network was an excuse. The most he gets is breast sizes while getting information from toads. Jiraiya dropped to a knee at the sudden punch. Kurama and Naruto could have sworn he heard a familiar voice say, "Had that coming." They looked up to see Neiko. "Ohio, Neiko-san," Naruto said as the Anbu waved from her hiding place. "You know Naruto could have done worse," Kurama pointed out. Jiraiya got up, not looking winded. "I know," he said, simply making Naruto have a deadpan look on his face. Hiruzen coughed to get the attention of the 3, which worked. "Anyway, Naruto-kun," Hiruzen started and grabbed a vest. "Thanks to Shikaku Nara's facts, my witness, and your hard work in the exams." He chucked the vest, getting Naruto to catch it. "I'm promoted to Chunin?" Naruto asked. "Nope," Hiruzen said with a sly grin. "Special Junin." Naruto's eyes widened before his own grin adorned on his face to the glee of the Sandaime. "Thanks, Grams." Naruto winked as he put it on. "I never got to ask," Naruto suddenly said. "Could Kurama get a headband?" Naruto asked, making Kurama shrug. "Get the look," Kurama said with her shrug. "Sure." He opened his drawer and rummaged through it before tossing a headband towards Kurama, who caught it. Naruto and Kurama's tails and ears glowed before vanishing. "And as your first mission as Special Junin is to find Tsunade of the Sannin and bring her back with Jiraiya," Hiruzen instructed, making Naruto sigh. "Alright, what's the rank?" Naruto asked. "S rank," he said, making Naruto's eyes widen. "I'm stepping down as Hokage," Hiruzen said, making Naruto frown. "I see," Naruto said until he had a grin adorned his face. "You could always give it to me." Naruto winked, making Hiruzen chuckle. "How I wish I could, but the daimyo would give me an earful for stepping down for a teenager," Hiruzen said, making Naruto nod. "Alright, let's go, oh great pervy sage," Naruto said, making Neiko burst out laughing with a few chuckles from the other Anbus and Hiruzen. Jiraiya grumbled something about blondes always ruin his fun. He did train Minato. Naruto and Kurama walked out of the Hokage Tower with Jiraiya following after him. "You got everything you need, Gaki?" Jiraiya asked. "Of course I do, pervy sage," Naruto said, making Jiraiya twitch at the clear new nickname for him. "Baka Gaki," he muttered, making Kurama giggle. They stood in silence as they walked out of the gates of Konoha until Naruto said, "What were they like?" Naruto asked, making Kurama and Jiraiya look over. "Mom and Dad," Naruto said, making Jiraiya's eyes soften. "Your mom. She was a fiery redhead like her," Jiraiya said, pointing towards Kurama. "She had the purest amethyst eyes you could imagine. She had a mean temper but had a serious alter ego." Jiraiya chuckled. She had this obsession with ramen and a verbal tic that she was born with by being impatient. She also wanted to become the first female Hokage. Naruto's eyes widened at the end. "Yeah, no," Naruto said, making Jiraiya's eyes widen. "How did? I have it too," Naruto said with a sheepish grin. "Your father, he was an idiot," Jiraiya said, making the other two face fault. "He was a goofy idiot that trained hard to protect his friends and mostly Kushina. He was a prodigy amongst everything he did. However, he had this switch, like he could turn off his emotions in a flash to turn serious. He did wipe out a whole platoon with one jutsu." Jiraiya paused. "Hirishin," the three said, making Jiraiya nod. "I see, thanks, pervert," Naruto said, making Jiraiya face fault. "I'm not a pervert, I'm a super pervert," Jiraiya proclaimed, making them sweat drop. He just insulted himself more, was the thoughts of the two Biju. Naruto kept walking as a tired Kurama was in his arms from walking for so long. Jiraiya began looking from one town to another until they stopped at a hotel. The secretary smiled at the two, three counting Kurama. "We would like a room, please," Jiraiya said. "Of course." She winked at Jiraiya. She turned around and swayed her hips, making Naruto look confused. "Someone is flirting with the super perv," Naruto deadpanned. Jiraiya was smirking slightly before she handed him the keys, grazing his hand. "Hey Naruto, how about you go to the room? I will be right there," Jiraiya said, handing him the keys, making Naruto roll his eyes. "Whatever you say, pervy sage," he said, walking up the stairs and started to look around for room 21. He found it and unlocked the door. He laid Kurama down on the bed before flopping down next to her. In about 5 minutes, Naruto heard a knock and smirked. He got up and started. "Did she turn you down, pervy?" He opened the door. "Sage." He paused when he saw two cloaked men with red clouds on them. One was a fish-like man with a massive bandaged sword on his back, while the other had black hair that went down to his neck. However, his eyes caught Naruto's attention. "The Sharingan. Pleasure to meet you, Itachi." Naruto deadpanned with this look. Itachi raised an eyebrow. "Oh, your brother is on my team. Do me a favor and pull the long-ass pole out of his ass so he is semi-normal." Naruto deadpanned, making the fish man burst out laughing. "Man, this one is hilarious. Can we keep him?" the fish asked, making Naruto smirk slightly. "You need to go back into the water before you dry up," Naruto said, making him smirk as well. "Kisame," Itachi started. I know," Kisame defended. "Naruto-kun, please come with us," Itachi said calmly. "What you need?" Naruto said, leaning against the door boredly. "I don't think it's a great idea going with someone who murdered most of the 7 swordsmen and his family." Naruto saw Itachi wince, noting that, "We're here for the Kyuubi that is sealed in you, Brad," Kisame said. "Sorry." Naruto lifted up his shirt and channeled visible chakra to his abdomen. "Kyuubi isn't sealed in me anymore," Naruto said, shocking them not seeing the seal appear. "What?" Kisame said, dumbfounded. "Yeah, I found a way to get rid of it." Naruto lied. He got Kurama out of him when he turned into his Biju form. "Yo, you should be dead," Kisame said accusingly. Naruto shrugged. "You have no use of me. I don't even know where he is." Naruto lied again with a straight face. "Now, if you mind, I am going to lay down." Naruto shut the door until Kisame stopped it with his hand. "I don't think so, Brad," Kisame said and grabbed Naruto's arm. "I suggest you let go." Naruto said, his bangs covering his eyes. "Make me," he said until Itachi's eyes widened. He saw what Kisame didn't see. Naruto looked up to reveal his red Rinnegan. "With pleasure," Naruto said as Kisame was blown back towards a window but caught the wall with his sword. "He has leader's eyes," Itachi thought. "No, they're different." Itachi nodded. Naruto turned towards Itachi when he saw his eye. "Tsukuyomi," Itachi said as Naruto was pulled into Itachi's mindscape. 72 hours of torture. Itachi said until he saw something unexpected. Naruto slowly morphed into his Biju form, shocking Itachi. Itachi was about to release the jutsu until his hands and legs were bounded by purple crystals. So tell me, a darker and deeper version of Naruto's voice echoed. What was your intention of killing your family? Naruto said as his Rinnegan spinned. His special power of a Biju is compulsion, but is useless against a special gem. Vote for a gem. I was ordered by Sandame and the elders. Naruto's eyes widen. Why? Naruto asked. They were planning a coup d'etat. Itachi said, why did you join Akatsuki? Naruto asked, to help from the shadows. Itachi said until Naruto's hold released him. Then keep helping by keeping this a secret. Tell them the Kyuubi is not in me anymore. Naruto said and broke the Tsukuyomi, surprising Itachi again. Itachi looked over at Kisame. We're leaving, Itachi said as Kisame was shocked that the kid broke Itachi's ultimate genjutsu and rushed through the window. Jiraiya finally got up the stairs and was confused when he saw two men go out the window forcefully. Naruto looked over towards Jiraiya. So, Itachi said hi. Naruto said, making him face fault. Damn it, Gaki. Jiraiya cursed, making Naruto chuckle. Come on, I got a beat on Tsunadeheim. Jiraiya said, making Naruto sigh. He walked back into his room and grabbed Kurama carefully, not trying to wake her up. He knew for a fact to never wake a girl until she does it herself. He shivered at the memory before he and Jiraiya walked out of the hotel and towards the town Jiraiya's spies have led. Naruto looked around and sighed. It was a small merchant town, but then saw Jiraiya leading them to a casino. I know I'm lucky, but why are we going to the casino on a mission? Naruto asked, making Jiraiya grin. Tsunade's nickname is the legendary sucker, gambling. Jiraiya said, making Naruto sweat drop. His all-powerful ninja have their quirks. Naruto deadpanned. What's mine? Jiraiya asked curiously. You're a sorry super pervert. Naruto corrected. That's right, Jiraiya said proudly, only for more of Naruto's amusement. They walked in to see a lot of gamblers at it, from poker tables to slot machines. God damn it, I almost had it, a voice shouted, making Naruto look over to see a blonde-haired woman to appear about her 20s. She had large pair of breasts, while a black-haired woman slightly younger than the other was watching with worry in her eyes while she held a pig. There she is, Jiraiya said, making Naruto's eyes widen. She looks so young, Naruto shouted in his mind. Naruto shook his head before doing a slight jog towards the two Sannin and apprentice. Oi pervert, Naruto complained slightly, making the black-haired women giggle. Another apprentice? Jiraiya? Thought you were done with that kind of stuff. Tsunade said, making Naruto chuckle. The only thing he's taught me is that he has every breast size in a mile radius of a hit sprain. Naruto said, making Tsunade chuckle. He's funnier too. Tsunade noted. Bo, she noticed his vest. Shunin already? She asked, making Naruto smirk. Special Junin actually. Naruto corrected. She nodded before turning back to the slot machine. Oh Tsunade, let me. Naruto said and pulled the lever until it landed in 3 sevens, making Tsunade's eyes widen. It poured out of money until it stopped, making Tsunade look over. Got the luck or a fox? Naruto lifted Kurama up slightly. Tsunade was silent for a while until Jiraiya broke it. Well, we're not here for visits actually. Jiraiya said, Sensei wants you to become the 5th Hokage. He said, making Tsunade scoff in confusion of Naruto. Hokage is a fool's job. Tsunade said, making Naruto's eyes darken. Whoever believes in that is going to wind up dead. Tsunade added, taking a drink of her sake. Jiraiya. Naruto started shocking Jiraiya without the nickname and the serious voice. Tsunade of the Sannin is dead. She is just a husk of her former self. She's not fit for the position. Naruto got up and started to walk away until a hand grabbed his arm. What did you say, brat? Tsunade demanded. Naruto looked up until his eyes swirled into his Rinnegan. You heard me, hag. Naruto shot back. What makes you so interested in the Hokage? Tsunade asked impatiently. Gramps did his best to protect me until I was 5 when I shut him out. Naruto had a swirl go around him of red, making her drop his arm. My father saved the village, giving me my blessing and a curse to save his village. Naruto's swirl multiplied on itself. Then it died down. My dream is to become the Hokage. Naruto said. Your grandpa and granduncle must be ashamed of you. Naruto hissed out until he walked out with the now awake Kurama in his arms and out of the stunned casino. Kurama jumped out of his arms and glowed before revealing Kurama with a sad look on her face. Stupid hag. Disrespecting all of the Hokages, Dad, he whispered. Kurama sat down next to him and turned towards him to see Naruto have tears in his eyes. She doesn't have the right, Naruto muttered, making Kurama lean her head into the crook of his neck. No, she doesn't, Kurama said before wrapping her arms around him. She doesn't have the right to talk about heroes, Kurama said before Naruto's tears unleashed. Inside, Tsunade was slightly taken back by the Bijuu Yukai and the Dujutsu. What did he mean about that, Jiraiya-sama? Shizune asked. His father was the fourth, Jiraiya said, making Tsunade's eyes widen. He's also the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Jiraiya added. But why did he say it was a blessing? Tsunade said, still confused. Jiraiya sighed before motioning the two to follow. He slowly moved the curtain from the window for the two to see Naruto crying on a red head. The fox he was holding is that girl in the Kyuubi, Jiraiya said, making their eyes widen. But how? Shizune stuttered out. I don't know. Jiraiya paused before making Shizune face fault. What I heard from Sensei was the Kyuubi saved Naruto at the age of 5. She also told him the truth that happened 12 years ago. Jiraiya said, Naruto does not go well with trust, so the Kyuubi is the only person he does trust. That's all for my now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.